Hey, what's going on, everybody? This is Corey LeBlanc, the ceremonial witch. Sorry, my hands are full and I got a smoke in my mouth right now. If you're wondering why, it sounds like I'm mumbling more than usual. Fuck, I just dropped my cocksucking phone. Oh no, this is a bad one. Ooh, I fuck up the fucking screens on these phones so often. But anyways, hey, it's still kicking, it's still recording, so what the fuck? What's going on, everybody? That's something to be grateful for, eh? The fact that my screen is already cracked as shit, and this is a newer phone, and I just dropped it right on the screen, right on the floor from about 3 feet, which, 3 feet's not that high, but, when it's a fucking phone, we're talking about glass screen and that, it's fucking high enough. But anyways, that's something to be grateful for that I literally was hanging off the phone like a fucking centimeter or half an inch off the fucking where the screen should be, and I just pushed it back down and just keep going. It's kind of like us in life as people, we get fucking knocked around and a little broken here and a little broken there, but we just keep fucking trucking on and on and on. And what else can you do? You can take the fucking route of complaining and whining, but good's that gonna do? Well, what's the whole giving up thing? And I'm not judging, and I'm not saying that I don't do these things, because I do these things. I do these things. I probably still do them. I just maybe not realize it as much, or want to pretend like I'm above people. No, that's not it. But no, it's just I had a conversation with a person who sent me a message on Instagram asking a bit about me and whatever, and and then I eventually said something to the effect of, let's see if I can pull it up here. It's just so I can get it right, actually. Sorry, everybody. I should be fucking way better prepared when I start these things. But, I just kind of wing it most of the time, eh? And, just be told, it's nice to wing it. It's part of the whole process. If you watch people, anybody, whether it's gurus, whether it's just your fan, somebody you like on TV, like a celebrity or something like that, whenever they do a performance, depending on what it is, when it's the people that just kind of wing it, like Peterson comes to mind, or, Birch comes to mind when he's talking about his shit, or, all these people that go up in front of people. Not everybody just wings it. People do have scripts and shit like that, but, a lot of the time when the people wing it, it works out pretty good, unless it's a person who's not good at that, who doesn't have training or practicing. But I'm telling you right now, and I'm not going to go further into this because I've already talked about it a few times, but the whole writing down thing there that Peterson said that I put on here, and that I said, and then I talked about the channeling and all that processes, and all about how writing will make you better. It's true, because my mind works a lot faster to find me the words, the next correspondences, the next thing I should say, before I can even comprehend what's going on. And what I mean by that is I'm talking along to you guys. I'm telling you a specific idea I wanted to talk about today. And as I get going, ideas are coming to me and my mouth is spitting it out. And as I hear it, it's like, wow, that sounded pretty smart. And then when I stop and think about that, then I start getting tongue-tied. And I got to stop myself from thinking about how good it sounds or not, but how relevant maybe it sounds. And like, wow, as if I pieced that together just now. It's pretty cool, but it's not me doing it. And that's why I give thanks. And I'm grateful to Thoth, Hermes, Mercury, Raphael, a little bit different there, but that's why I give thanks, because, I asked a long time ago for this kind of knowledge, and it comes to me. And the better and further I develop, the better that'll come to me. And that's what people need to understand. They'll say, well, I did magic, I asked for this, and I didn't get it yet. Well, if you're just sitting around waiting for these ideas to fall out of the sky, then all of a sudden you just start recording and you become rich or something like that and have a podcast or YouTube channel that works. Well, then you're not putting forth any action. It's not going to happen. If you ask for something, hopefully you give in the good enough offerings, like you don't have to necessarily look up what they like, but basic correspondences, right? Gemini corresponds to Mercury a little bit there. Communications, commerce, colors, yellow, orange, the caduceus, stuff like that. You can make something, you can give something, you could just have an orange candle, carve something in it and say it's for Mercury, and ask for the knowledge and all that. That's your first step, doing that within a ritual. And you make sure you do everything right, and you follow the structure and all that. And after you're done your ritual, you don't continuously hope for it to happen. You got to let it go. So this is where doing other magics after that help that out. I don't believe in just doing a spell once. Okay, I don't know if I've ever stated that, and I've made it very clear. I'm pretty sure that and it's not so much anymore, but the majority of the time of me doing spells, when I first started, I would do the same spell for the whole month, the whole fucking month, every fucking day, or until it happened, basically, you know. And what has started happening is eventually it would happen, but I know sometimes it would almost be as if I was doing an affirmation. It was a way of making sure the magic worked. So I'd have so many candles, you know, every 2 weeks I'd go buy candles. This is when I was off, but I was still getting an unemployment check for the most part, most of the time. Not always there. I've had a lot of sketchy months where nothing came in, and then all of a sudden, boom, a surprise check comes in, or a surprise deposit in my bank account, or someone drops off some cash, or somebody I didn't know owed me money, fucking brings me money, whatever the case is. But anyways, so all month long, you know, every 2 weeks I go buy more candles, right? I'd buy fucking 8 of each fucking color of obviously the 4 fucking my God, what the hell's wrong with me? The 4 elements, you know, red, blue, yellow, and green. Okay, I'd have 8 of those bad boys. Now, because the moon and Jupiter can both kind of share the color blue, because they're both kind of water, you distinguish one as purple, you know, and you can make the distinguish for both, you know. Jupiter could be purple, but so can the moon, right? And the moon's more female, so you might think of that if you're a guy, but it really doesn't matter. My mother, she used to tell me her favorite color was blue. And how funny is that? She's a Cancer, right? She was born in fucking on July 3rd, and her favorite color is fucking blue. Well, her favorite number was also 7, which is, you know, the month or whatever, and that might just be that. But point is, water's blue, or most people, well, it's not really blue, but most people, you know, associate the sky and water as being blue. But the sky's not actually blue, it's reflecting the water. Well, the water's not actually blue, it's reflecting the sky. Well, then where the fuck is that blue coming from? What the fuck is going on? That's a good question. That's a whole episode in itself. But anyways, point is, I buy all those candles. So then, and I do the same thing because Saturn, I would give black. Saturn gets his own pack of black. They have these pack of 15s that fucking, they're like single, like a candlestick. You know, not a big double bad boy, the big thick ones. In my town, this is the only place I could find at a reasonable price. The way I was going through candles, you don't want to be buying them at an occult store. I was getting this shit from the dollar store, which isn't great, but when you're on a budget, you're on a budget, right? Like, I mean, I'm giving every day of the week the different god a candle every single day, sometimes twice a day. You know, and an incense. And the incense I like to burn just to burn. So the incense, you know, I would have special incenses, like my road openers incenses, definitely my frankincense incense, you know, anything frankincense you can get your hand on, especially if you get a good deal on it, pick it up. And I'm not saying to go buy it out like crazy, because, you know, that tree, I don't know if it's on the endangered list yet. Last time Birch talked about it, it said it was on its way to being there. And there's plenty that are on the endangered list, and it's not all what people think. People just assume it's people cutting them down. Well, it's people cutting them down, but it's because people are cutting them down to make all our shit for us. And then once again, you got to find that line where, okay, I'm into occult stuff, but you're going to be an occultist and you're going to say all the stuff you're going to say about, you know, society, and you want things to go a certain way, but you're going to keep going to a store to buy all your stuff. Now, I'm not saying to not support your local occult store. Definitely do. But there's certain aspects of your practice that you should be able to do yourself, you know, because, you know, if you were a member of the Golden Dawn, let's say, you would have to make all your stuff yourself. And I take that very seriously. I give it Frederick Xavier said a long time ago in one of his mailbags, when someone asked, do you have to make it yourself or do you have to buy it? And, you know, talking about like the athame was probably one of the most hardest things people think are to make, or maybe your altar, if you don't want to buy that. But, you know, I make both. Anybody ever wants me to make something for them, just fucking send me a shout and I'll make you a fucking athame. I'll make you a fucking sword. I'll make you a fucking wand. I'll make you a fucking altar. You know, I use cement. Like I go buy a specific kind of cement. The more natural and less chemical and earthy, the better. But you're never going to get a compound completely without chemical, as far as I can see. And I mean, like I said, I do everything on a budget. But I mean, I'm bouncing from topic to topic. Today's brutal. Sorry, guys. But anyways. So, you know, and then I fucking, you know, I read the instructions, obviously, but I've done a little bit of cement work with my hands. I've done a lot of different construction work. I've worked with my hands a lot. But so I know I built forms for fucking the basements of places, meaning, you know, we have to build a box that, will hold in the concrete until the concrete hardens. So I've done that. I've taken my own concrete, got in a fucking pail, poured some in, and made enough to fill up 2 boxes that were more rectangular, but the length was going from, the ground to the sky, basically. Not that high, obviously. It was about up to my waist, but those are my 2 pillars, and then after I would chisel them out and make them look as much pillory as it possibly can. I know a lot of this came into play. Like, I fuck around with the wood, but at first I was just seeing what I could do. But now I fuck around with the wood and I make patterns directly in the wood that take, and it doesn't always take the right way, but it always comes out pretty sick looking. But yeah, so I make 2 fucking pillars just like that. Because people are always like, well, how can you make a fucking altar without using nails? How are you going to do it? And well, this is one way. Because if you get a piece of plywood, a piece of wood, whatever the case is, you can paint it black, which is what I do, right? Or you can take a big circle piece of plywood, even better, and put a big fucking star on it as your pentacle. And then you put that on top of those 2 pillars I just named, and bam, you got a fucking altar. And I'm telling you, you can get a bag of concrete for $7. You can get wood from fucking skids to make your fucking pillar things, or, find wood. You can find wood places, but generally speaking, you can get a sheet of plywood here, you know what I mean, and cut a circle out of it. And I'm talking probably 4 feet by 4 feet if you want. You can get that for, depending when, anywhere from 10, sometimes under 10 if it's on sale, sometimes $12, depending on how big you want, But it could be even less than that. $7 for the concrete, and you can find even less than that. There's $4 bags of concrete at the Home Depot. So right there, you're still under $20 with just those with the 2 things you had to buy. You know what I mean? And that's pretty cheap. You make a bug, and it's going to look sick. It's going to look better than anything you could, well, maybe not anything you can buy, but it's going to look pretty fucking sick. And, then you can paint those pillars. Like if your pentacle is painted black, well, then you might not want to do, a black and a white pillar, but that's up to you, right? You can get creative with it, fucking divide it into the quarters, right? You make your big pentacle on there, your star on it, right? Going around all the extremities of the fucking circle. And then everywhere there's a star for the different element, you could paint it that color associated with that. The top, maybe do like a purple, for spirit. And then your east and your west will kind of be, the east will be right on the right side of the purple part there. And then the water would be on the bottom left of the round circle table there, where the other side is. And across from that, you would have earth, which would be technically above the water, beside the purple spirit piece of the pentacle or pentagram. And then on the opposite corner would be your green, and then it would be red on the opposite corner. So this way, they're both across from each other, and it's in line with each other. And you have, your east kind of facing east, but off to a little bit, and your north, same thing, kind of off a little bit. But if you return it, you can make it kind of like a compass and all that. And boom, you got a multicolored and multifaceted fucking pentacle, which is one of the things you have to make. The first fucking grade is the earth grade. But anyways, so making your stuff I take very seriously. And, if anybody wants, like I said, if anybody wants me to make them anything, fuck yeah. Obviously I'll have to pay for the supplies, but that's it. I'll tell you how much it's going to cost me, and then obviously if you don't live in my hometown, then we're going to have to figure out some sending arrangements, and I'm not going to cover that because I'm already making it and giving you my time for free. So, but yeah, I'll fucking help any witch or magician out who wants help, whether it's sending you the plans to make it, giving you step by step how to make it, whatever. Same with the wand. Like I still have fucking branches in here, and they got sap in them. You know what I mean? Like I said, 3-year-old fucking Christmas trees that died. Like I said, anybody who's just maybe tuning into me now for the first time and hears this, be like, oh, he kills Christmas trees? What the fuck? No, I had killed Christmas trees. And even last year when I didn't believe in it, we went and cut down a Christmas tree because I'm out fucking numbered here. 5 to fucking 1. Well, I guess the baby would be on my side or she wouldn't count. So 4 to 1. But still, it's a big deal because we made a tradition around it. And I really enjoyed that tradition before I became a ceremonial magician / a beginner witch. I really fucking like that tradition. I liked the whole going out there with the family and getting your own tree and all that. But, And for some reason, it just never clicked in. Like, this is wrong. We're cutting these trees. Well, these people are farming these trees to be cut down and this and that. And I was always like, I want a real tree. I don't want no fake shit. Now it's like complete 180, you know? It's something I'd probably polarized in. Like, and that's the thing, polarity. I'm not going to get into this too much because I'm already bouncing around. I can't even finish my first initial thought. But polarity works in that sense, right? Whatever you're completely against, well, you're polarized against it, technically speaking. Like, I don't believe we should be killing animals the way we do now. And you could say, well, you're polarized against killing animals, and I am. But I'm not against people hunting to eat an animal and doing it properly and feeding their family with their kill and all that. I'm not against that, especially if it's something you hunt. You know, if you're hunting something that shouldn't be hunted, then then there's a whole different problem arise there. But to be honest, I'm not against hunting. I'm against the massacre of these animals. So it's the same thing when it comes to cutting down these trees. You say, well, you're polarized against cutting down Christmas trees. No, I'm not against going out and picking your own tree. If everybody stopped buying all the Christmas trees at wherever they sell them, Home Hardware, Home Depot, whoever sells these places, all these little farms, well, maybe not the farms, actually the farms, all these places where they sell, the farms aren't bad because at least you go and you cut down your own tree, I would say, because this way, if you don't cut a tree, it's still alive. So I guess that would be the best option, I would say. But yeah, if everybody went out and cut down their own Christmas tree or bought a fake tree, putting the plastic for those trees and shit like that probably isn't good. And all the paper and stuff, probably cutting down trees to make that tree. So in the end, you're still having the same consequence. So, and it's probably like less than one tree to make one tree. So it's not like it's a tree for tree or like it takes 3 real trees to make one fake tree. But I don't know. You never know. It totally could. But point is, if everybody went out and cut down their own tree and only cut down a tree that they wanted, if that was the tradition, then hell, it wouldn't be a problem, And that's the one tree we have an abundance of because people are planting. So yeah, on a scale of good versus bad in this topic, it's not a very bad idea because people take them to do this. But, a lot of them get cut down and not used, because after a couple of weeks being there, if they don't get picked up or chose, then yeah, they get fucking shot to the chipper and whatever, or sold somewhere else, hopefully sold to an occult store or somebody who can take at least a sap out of it, use the pine needles for some spell work and use the bark for fucking wood and shit, But anyways, way off what I was going for. But anyways, so sorry, I saw my wife's coat. I'm like, what the fuck? She was wearing her coat when I was just with her, but it's on the couch. But no, she didn't. She took it off before she went to work. But anyway, so how did I get on to that fucking topic, and where the fuck was I going? Oh, yeah, I'll make anybody anything. But, yeah, so a wand, doesn't matter. You want fucking oils, whatever, I'll make you whatever you want. I don't want a bunch of random questions or a bunch of things. But if you are in need of something, well, first thing I would do would be like, well, what is it, what do you want? Well, if you want a fucking altar, well, I'll send you all the fucking step-by-step what you should do for an altar, or tell me what kind of look do you want, and I'll send you and make it yourself, because that's your best bet, because you're going to put your energy into it. That's why making your own shit is so much more valuable, because you're putting the energy in creating this. It's a whole creative process. Doing things like this give you like these little types of meaning. When I was on EI, the days where I was carving my wand or making my cup, my chalice, or making my pentacle, or carving or sharpening or making my own dagger. And I've done that. I've done that too. Very cheaply the first time, but but I've done it. Every time I was working on something creative like that, it was amazing. I didn't have an idea if I was going to be working in a month or two. I had no idea what was going on. I had no idea, if we were going to pay the bills and shit like that, or my magic was going to come true, but I didn't care. I was just doing that, and everything else worked out around me. And it goes back to that thing I said a long time ago, that when you find your passion and purpose, one of the byproducts is that things just are happening for you. And it's not the reason everybody says. Everybody says, well, when you find your passion and purpose, then the money is a byproduct of that. Yes, it's not always just of doing your passion or purpose, though. It can be, and probably more often than not, it is. People find a way to monetize what they like doing. But honestly, in my opinion, it has to do with the fact that you're not worrying about shit. You're not thinking about bad, you're not doing the constant self-talk that's detrimental, that's going to fuck up your manifestations and shit like that. Because whenever, you do your spell work and all that and you have shit to do and you're not thinking about it, great. But then what about the other times whenever you're either sleeping or you're awake or you have nothing to do or you're at work bored or whatever the case is, when all you do is think? And then you start thinking about stupid shit and you're not busy and you're not happy, because towards the end, I wasn't doing those creative things. I was doing my podcast, which was awesome, which is a creative process all on its own, especially if I try to go for the 3 hours, which I don't think I've ever gone for 3 hours. But, my last few have been about over an hour every time, which is hard for just me to do. I didn't even think it'd be the opposite, but it wasn't enough. It wasn't enough. I still felt like something needs to be done, and I slipped into another, dark night of the soul / some more shadow work, basically. And it's because I needed to go back and go to work and do something. And it was kind of like what I was about to say there. And coming back to the initial idea before I got off on that whole other topic about tools, but the quote I said to the guy that I was talking to this morning on Instagram, who sent me a message, well, it's not a quote there. I just said it. It's something I just said or came up with. But it's probably derived from the shit from Peterson I watch over and over again. But he asked me a question, and I said, yeah, well, how are things going or something like that. And I said, all good, He asked me about myself, and I said, well, how are things or something like that. He asked it twice, and the way I took it was like, well, really, man, how are things? And so I gave it to him in a material perspective. I said, well, I got a house, I got 2 cars, and I got 4 healthy kids, and I got a wife. I can't fucking complain. My life's pretty damn good if you look at that. If that's the ruler, basically. He said, wow, no, that is excellent. And for out of nowhere, this is the next comment I made, which is kind of weird to just say this to somebody you don't know. But, yep, life isn't without complication or struggle. But if you have things, people, obligations, responsibility, then there's no use getting down or giving up. Just readjust and keep going forward. Change is the only constant in our life. Knowing that helps immensely, because when things are great, then they then take a turn for the worse, you always know that it will change back. That's what I wrote to this motherfucker that I don't know, who just asked me how things were going twice in a row, and I conceptualized and took it a different way. But that is what it is. And, I walked my daughter to school, and then I walked home. And then I was reading that the whole time I was walking home, like, this is interesting. But, it's just a play on the things, like I said, that Peterson talks about, that I listen to often. And, the Kabbalion, that's the law of compensation. Not compensation, the law of rhythm, the law of rhythm. The pendulum swings and everything. And the measure of the pendulum to the left, swing to the left, is the measure to the right. Meaning, however broke you are is however rich you're going to be. And you got to watch shit like that, though. Because thinking that you are in debt, if you think you are super in debt, and then you think you're going to be owed a bunch of riches, well, you got to understand that you could get in your own way. You can keep cause and effect happening and continually causing that pendulum to get pushed and fuck up your swing, right? Because the pendulum is going to swing. It's going to keep going. There's going to be a natural rhythm, all right? But what happens is, and I've had a video about this, I think it's actually called something about the pendulum or cause and effect or something like that. It's an older video, probably around the 20 episode mark line. It might even be on Magic on a Budget, which I should really be putting episodes in. I've been having a hard enough time just making episodes, not so much anymore, but there was a few rough patches now that I've had. So instead of trying to specifically put something there, because I think all my stuff entails magic on a budget, basically, because I do everything on a budget, because for one, I don't control most of the finances of my family. My wife does. Okay. And that's because a long time ago, like I said, when I went on opiates, part of the way to get her to trust me again, to pay the bills, because, I fucked up for a while. And there's a pendulum swing in that, right? I had control of the money. I was paying the bills, and then I stopped paying the bills, but I was lying to her telling her I was paying the bills. So my pendulum was swinging the opposite way, swinging the bad way instead of, back and forth. Like I pay this, I pay that, I pay this, I pay that, I pay this, I don't pay that. Sorry, I pay this, I don't pay that. I pay this, I don't pay that. Well, I was kept doing the don't pay that, but I was telling her I paid this. So I was fucking way out of balance, obviously. And it's something you can't sustain no matter what you do. Unless, you tell you don't pay it and you don't pay something else and you pay that and you got to continue, maybe one lie over and over again in a circle until you finally come back, and then maybe, but I don't think it's something you can ever sustain unless you can make it true later on. But anyways, that's a different topic. But anyway, so yeah, there's technically a pendulum swing on that because I was telling her I was doing something that I didn't do. I broke her trust. Well, she felt something about that hurt, that I would do that. And I can, in my head, be like, well, it's just because I had an opiate problem. It wasn't me and all that. But it doesn't change the fact that to her, especially if someone, even I have friends that do drugs, the same drugs, they're a couple and they go to the similar clinics as me and all that. And that's some of the people I help. And, even them, that his girlfriend or him himself, whenever one of them in the past were on something like crack or coke, you know what I mean? Well, not necessarily make you lose your soul, but the fact that drug makes you want more is part of the high because, it really makes you almost feel like you fall in love. And not like actually falling in love, but it stimulates that part of the brain in a chemically induced way, dopamines and anyways, I forget the pronunciation of all the fucking shit it does. But anyways, whenever one of them would be on that, let's say, and they went through the other one's purse or wallet or pants or for money or stayed out all night, getting high and not coming home because the other one would know it and either be mad or jealous or whatever the case was, wouldn't matter. Be like, well, you made the choice before you got high, and that is the issue because how this is going to happen. The first time it ever happens, to you, maybe you can get away with something like that. You don't drink in a while, all of a sudden you drink, you passed out, and your wife doesn't know you're out all night, and then all of a sudden the next morning, or, at 4 a.m., your buddies bring you home, and they said, yeah, sorry, Sandy, we meant to call you, but, we're having too much fun, and Corey passed out because he drank too fast and he just slept it off in the bedroom, and then he's sober enough, or my wife came home and was able to drive him home because we were all drinking or whatever the case is. You might get away with that because you got an alibi, you got a story and all that. But then if you go out the next time and you drink that much and that same thing happens and they bring you back home, what is she going to say? Well, you did this last time, dumbass. Why did you do it again? Well, it's the same thing. And you can say addiction all you want, but there is an initial choice at first. And until that choice becomes a habit, then it's no longer the choice anymore. Then it's a mental health issue and all that. But at some point, there's a choice there. And that's the part where you need to go back and train. And that's the same concept for a drug user, for an alcoholic, for somebody who has a problem stealing or gambling or eating food in the middle of the night, let's say. For any fucking habit, you got to trace it back to where is the point where I make the choice. When is that point in your day? So whenever, let's say in the middle of the night, when you wake up in the middle of the night, well, you can use the excuse, okay, well, I know in the middle of the night that, I'm on my subconscious mind, and the part of my mind that is rational and telling me I shouldn't do this and stuff like that isn't awake yet, so I'm just going to go do this. Okay, well, you can use that excuse if you want, it's valid for sure. There actually is something like that. There's a part of your brain that isn't obviously working. I forget the name of it, but there actually, if you look it up, there is it's your problem solving. It's the same reason they tell you not to make big decisions before you go to bed or when you first wake up. Same reason that whenever, not the same reason that whenever something bad happens or something traumatic happens or you're very happy, but either way, they don't want you making decisions on either one pole or the other, or when you're either just on your subconscious mind or not, because, you might agree to something that you don't even remember consciously, but the other reason is your reasoning factor, your ability to gauge good or bad or what you should or shouldn't do, you know what I mean, is not, they call your conscious,
you're conscious for a reason, right? A little devil dude, an angel dude. Hey, what's it called? Is it called your conscious? That's my conscious. I don't know. Anyways, but point is, that's not awake when you first wake up. You don't have those faculties to tell you that you shouldn't do this, your reasoning faculties, and that's why you shouldn't, decide to buy a house or sell your house or decide to get divorced or get married whenever you first wake up. So if there's any girls out here and they want to get their man, or a man wants to get their girl, they're not saying no. Well, you have a good chance of doing it whenever they first wake up, getting the answer you want, not saying that's a good thing or not, or bad. And you might get the opposite answer. She might actually want to marry you, and she might say no. And maybe if you were said no to, maybe this is why. But anyways, besides the point. But yeah, so I have an episode about the pendulum swing, and that's what happened. I disobeyed her trust. I did something wrong for a long period of time. And, I can't take back my actions, babe. I chose to do those things. I made that fucking choice, even though I knew it was going to hurt you, even though I knew it would lead to issues. I made that choice. And I'm telling you that now I made that choice so many times that I have an issue. And the issue is that I can't not make that choice because now it's a habit. So it's for you to trust me again, for you to know that I'm sincere, for you to know that I don't want to do this and I want to change. I'm not that person saying I want to change but doesn't mean it, who's going to take every chance he is and plays the victim behind your back and, or plays the victim to your face and then behind your back is just laughing about you. I'm not that guy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to let you control the money. I'm going to give you the bank card. I'm going to go get help. I'm going to give you the bank card and you control the finances. And she's been doing it ever since. And here's the thing. She's told me plenty of times, here's your card back. Here's your card back. And I have my own bank card, and I have money on it, but I don't touch it. It's there just in case of emergencies. And, most of the time when I leave it here at home. You've heard me go to the bank machine a few times there on these on my episodes, maybe once or twice. But, yeah, it's when I go pull out money, and I never use Interac, first of all. And that's probably a habit I got into back when I started doing pills and shit like that, because everywhere you use your card there's a fucking trace, and not even just for the government or the elites or whatever. Something where my wife could track, you know what I mean? We don't. When I had Facebook, she had my password, she's got my banking passwords. Our phones are left unlocked around the house. We're not that kind of couple that locks everything up and has secrecy between us. Everything's wide open here when it comes to that. Not open relationship. Not saying I wish or don't wish that. I think it's problematic. I think it would be great in the short term and then shitty in the long term. Part of the reasons you want to have that trust and this bond with a person is to know ultimately that you don't even have to think about it, that they have your back. And I lost that with my wife when I did this. And she understood that, there was a chemical addiction, my body aching for it, that it was a physical pain, but in the same sense, she also knew that, I made a choice to do those things. There was a point in time where I've never touched those drugs. And, whether or not I knew it or not, I still took those drugs. So whether it's a thing, you could say, well, you didn't know you'd be addicted to it, after doing it so many days in a row. I'm like, yeah, but how stupid is it to take something that you don't know anything about? That's the worst alternative there. I'd rather say, well, I looked it up and then made that stupid choice to do it anyways, than to say, no, I didn't know anything about it and I just took it, because that just sounds even stupider. But that's unfortunately the fucking truth. So anyways, I'm off topic again. I just keep bouncing around. But yeah, so the whole point of me talking about that, was mainly to illustrate how I had to get her trust back for that. And that's why I gave her the bank card. That's why she still has the bank card. That's why she still controls the money and controls the finances, because of that reason, And it's a great way to earn your trust back from somebody. And, a lot of people say, once you lose trust, man, you never get back. And, as far as I can tell, that's not true. It depends on the sincerity of the person. Because I think there are a lot of people that don't know what they want, or they are habitually stuck. All right? Because I think people, you get all kinds of people, and it's not as simple as just a cheater never change, or a drug addict can never change. Or it's not as simple as that. because there are a minority of every one of these groups that have been able to change and maintain it. So why is that? Well, it's just because that's the only good people in the world. There's only a small percentage of people in the world. Is that true? Is that why the smallest percentage of the world, the 1%ers, are the rich ones then? Because we're pegging them out to be bad, not good. And so that theory doesn't really fly. No, there's a bunch of different factors, right? If these people don't have a passion or don't have a purpose or anything to live for, it'd be very hard to stop doing something that gives you immediate pleasure, immediate satisfaction, giving yourself those compulsive fucking, I don't know how to put it, but the things you crave impulsively, you see something and you want it, basically. That's your impulsive desires, right? We all have them. And, some will say, and I believe this to a certain extent, that our TV, our advertising, all that shit creates a lot of that in us, and you can debate me on that if you want, but there's a lot of debate on TV creating salt and baking soda. Baking soda is great for whitening. It's great for fucking odors, right? You put it in your fridge, take the odor, you take it, put it on your shoes, right? You can smoke crack with it. Oh, that's not relevant, but sorry, I shouldn't be doing that. People are trying to get off dope and they hear dope talk. It's not good. So I'm sorry for anybody out there struggling. I'll do my best to not be so insensitive and be a dick like that. But anyways, yeah, baking soda and Himalayan salts or whatever like that, and you put warm water, with warm water, you do that every time, because just putting a little bit of toothpaste on there and doing your teeth. Well, yeah, the toothpaste is made to foam and all that up, kind of like soap does in your hands when you mix it up, right? But so with this substance, you have to do it a little different. You have to find a way that works for you. I could share that with you, but I'm not going to get into that on here. But find a way that works for you, and you can get different kinds of things you could put on there, because there's so many different herbs and different fucking kinds of plants that are so good for your teeth. Things that are anti-inflammatory, right? Your gums are inflamed, gingivitis, right? Blah 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 blah. Bullshit. You put a specific herb on there. And I mean, there's so many. I think basil's got an anti-inflammatory on it. Thyme or rosemary, one of them too. Any fucking herb that helps with inflammation, you add that to somehow. You got to chop it up very small, put it on there. You can get creative with this shit and make it some kind of jelly paste with, adding like something like, I'm not going to say honey, but a natural maybe, a natural honey or something like that for a little bit, just for the flavor. You say brush your teeth with honey. Wow, you'll see whenever you start using fucking salt water, say basil and fucking and baking soda. Wow, you're gonna want flavor, but you're not doing it for the fucking taste. You're doing it to clean your teeth. I'm a man, so I'm not a woman, so I don't buy shampoo and soap for the fucking smell. I don't give a shit. So wash my body. Well, the teeth are no different. Yes, maybe we don't have to brush our teeth, but with the food we are taking in, we have to brush our teeth. That's the issue. If you're not taking in bad food, if you're taking in only good shit, all right, then there's a good chance that you might not have to do this. But once again, your teeth are like bones. It's like your nails on your hand, okay? Some people are going to have strong nails. Some people are going to have weak nails. Some people are going to have strong hair. Some people are going to have weak hair. Some people are going to have strong bones. Some people are going to have weak bones. Some people are going to have strong cellular systems, organ systems, and some people are going to have weak ones, okay? But if you do have one of those things, you don't just live with it and roll over and say, this is what it is, and this is probably going to kill me one day. No, you do some research and figure out how to fix it, how to make it better, or at least reduce the symptoms. And that's what our healthcare does now. So that would be your first step. Go to a doctor and see how you can reduce the symptoms their way. And then once they give you the names and the titles of all the things and the affected areas, and you actually paid attention and listened, all right? You don't go home and fucking woe is me and try to get a fucking pity party. You fucking go do some fucking research. This works for you. This works for your children. This works for anything. You fucking figure it out. I've only ever had to do this once. And this is before I was into witchcraft and all that. And you know what? I didn't do it properly. So I'm not here to judge. But when my wife had cervical cancer, okay, and got rid of it, and it's never come back, and it never will. But when that happened, only thing I did, funny enough, was ask fucking God to fucking fix her. But I never prayed with visualizations. I wasn't the type of person to visualize when I prayed. And the reason for that was I had to do everything in my fucking power because of my ADD tendencies that when I was a kid, when I grew up Christian, when I prayed, it was hard for my mind to not wander places. So I wouldn't be the type of person that would be like praying for someone who's sick and picturing them sick. You know what I mean? Picturing them at the hospital as I'm praying for them. You know, that's only part of it. You know, when you add the prayer, the words you ask the divine, and you add that to the thought of them all day long is when you come into trouble. Okay? Because really, just saying the words aren't going to do much. Depending on your connection. Now, some people have a different connection. Now, knowing what I know about my spirit, my grandmother, my fucking chart, everything, okay? The fact that I know what I know now, there's no doubt in my mind that I got through and spirit shot me a bone and hooked me up and hooked her up. You know, do I have healing powers? No. Did my grandmother have healing powers? No. But divine forces did some divine shit through my grandmother, and divine forces did some divine shit through me. And I'm so grateful for that. And I'm never going to be able to thank them enough, but I'm going to try every goddamn day of my life to make sure it's enough. It's not a one and done. That's not like, no, you get 4 candles because you saved my wife. No, you get as many candles as I can afford for the rest of my life. Thank you. There's no fucking price for that. You know what I mean? And this is before I knew magic, but it doesn't matter. Now that I know magic, I don't give candles for the things I'm already grateful for the things that divine forces gave me? Fuck no, only an idiot thinks that way. That's part of the whole gratitude scheme. It's part of the whole gratitude concept. You know, people get into magic and people tell them, you know, be grateful, be grateful. Well, then they think they're going to have to be grateful for, first of all, their manifestation, acting like it's already here, you know, and then be grateful for what they got going on right now. But there are some, and those ones are the good students that are going to go far, you know what I mean? And anybody else, well, they have to adopt this personality, that's all, and everybody can do it. But the ones that, you know, are able to give thanks for all the shit they've already have, gone back and, you know, did the work and found the things they're grateful for and found the things they're not so happy for, and write something saying that they're grateful for all that shit and that they forgive those people and all that and really put an attempt for, even though they may not mean it, but at least they're trying, you know. Then yeah, they're going to go far, those people. They're going to get this shit done. And that's why you do this shit. But yeah, so anyways, back to that. That's the only thing I did. That's the only thing I did. I did it a few times, mind you. I did it a few times. And most of the time I did it when I was working out or asleep or before bed. Yeah. Like if I couldn't sleep one night, I'm sure that was the thing bugging me. I would start off with the fucking rosary. Oh yeah, I was a devout. You know, I didn't believe in the church, even whenever I was Catholic, per se. But I would do the rosary, as much of the rosary, until I started falling asleep. Which, if you don't know, the rosary is, there's 50 Hail Marys around the fucking thing. 5 or 6 Our Fathers. 4, I don't know the name of it in English, but I know the prayer in French. But it's a small one. You do it just on the string and not on an actual bead. And then when you go down the tip, which I didn't normally do, but you have I believe in God, Father Almighty, and you got a bunch of different complicated ones that, you know, I'd have trouble remembering from time to time too while I was doing them. But I would generally just go around the circle and not do the complicated ones, but I would do the I believe in God, Father Almighty bullshit too. And that was to get my mind in the right place so I'm not thinking about anything. You know what I mean? For me, it was just so I was paying attention. Because for me, one of the tricks I learned growing up with ADD and not being on the medication was I would have to really hone in on what I needed to do. So over and over again, I'd have to do extra work. Or in class, whenever teachers explaining shit, if I was about to talk to people, I was allowed to take out a book. I'm probably one of the only people, and that's why I had to sit in special spots so not everybody could see me. And if anybody did and they asked, you know, a teacher would take them aside and explain something to them or whatever, or I would try to stop if you know. Anyways, but I was able to write And what I would do is I practice whatever she was talking about. If I already thought I knew about it and all this, instead of going around talking and disrupting the other kids who still had to listen to the lesson and me bragging I already know and start explaining it myself and confusing other children and all that, I was allowed to start working on either the work at hand or whatever the case was. And that's part of the trick. So if I had to pray, if I was praying to God for something I wanted, for something for him to fix, not necessarily that he caused it, but something I wanted him to fix that happened, then I would do that. And now that I think about it, that was like a sacrifice. Now, I'm not saying those prayers are a sacrifice, but that's a whole lot of time to devote to doing prayers that are quote unquote made for. And that's the thing, right? Think about that. There's more Hail Marys on that rosary than any other prayer. So you were saying you are praying to Mary more than anything when you do the rosary. You know what I mean? More than anything, right? But anyways, I was setting the tone, and that's a lot of time. And I'm sacrificing the time I should be sleeping. I could have been like lazy and said, no, I'm just going to fucking go to sleep. Fuck this praying shit. I'll ask God for help tomorrow. You know what I mean? Put it off. And times I've done that. I don't think during this though, but there's times I've done that for sure, 100%. But no, I put in that time. I fucking did that. And then I would ask. I would never picture them sick. I would never do that. I've never done that. I have a vivid imagination, but I never use my imagination in that way. My imagination wasn't the type of imagination that would run wild like that. Now, at times before bed, it still does. Doing certain things, like if the teacher was talking or I'm in class or at work, my imagination can go other places, but I'm always directing it. Or so I think anyways, for the most part. But yeah, so that's how that worked for me. And, that was all I did. And that's why, looking back at it at first, it's like, well, maybe I do have magical power. I don't know. It's just laying with her, being beside her, eating her out, put my dick in her, put my fingers in her, got healed, fuck. I mean, the doctor fucking pulled it out too, you know what I mean? And it never grew back, but he only got a piece of it and shit. But point is, it's something I don't have to worry about anymore. And is the doctor? Yes. Was it me? Yes. Was it my wife? Yes. Was it everybody? Yes. We're all fucking one anyways, right? We're all the same motherfucker. We're all from the same motherfucker. If you don't want to believe we're all the same fucker, then don't. But we're all from the same fucker. That means that doctor that worked on my wife is not an evil asshole, not an evil capitalist or an evil fucking 1%er with an agenda to fucking kill off people. He's just a dude that had more money as a kid or got a lucky break. Maybe he was from fucking, because there are doctors out there that are from fucking rags to riches. Let me tell you. But he's just a dude that got a fucking break and, he's doing his thing. And I'm sure people judging him because he's got a nice car and has a nice house. People mad because they had to wait 4 hours at the clinic to be seen by this doctor who's making all that money. People that are fucking mad at him saying he's a rich fuck and hey, he should fucking help fucking the poor and he should do this service for free. I bet you he donates more than those people have ever done. And that's the thing people don't like to fucking think about, but it's true. They just assume because people are rich, they should donate, put in their time, do charity work, all this shit. If they're rich, they got the time. They don't have to work a fucking job like me. And that's fucking horseshit if you think like that. If you think like that, you're never going to become one of them. First of all, you despise them. So with despising them, you're never going to become something you despise. Absolutely impossible. Your mind will never let you have it. And if it happens by chance, let's say somehow your mind says, oh yeah, you want to be rich? Fine. But you never changed your mindset yet. So here's a lottery ticket. You just won $3 million. You're going to piss it away in less than 3 years. And you're either going to be a statistic or back at your fucking job bitching. And you still won't have learned a lesson. Have you? You know what I mean? Those people are out there. You could be that type of person that says, oh, if I fucking won the millions, I wouldn't fucking do that. I wouldn't fucking do that. How the fuck do you know? How the fuck do you fucking know? You don't know what the fuck would happen. Maybe you wouldn't piss it away, but it doesn't mean you won't walk out and get hit by a fucking bus. And is that any different than pissing it all away and taking your life? No fucking different. Who's to say? How did that person know? A person spent it. They were going to enjoy it, right? And you're going to invest in it, and then maybe you're going to die anyway. So really, who's right and who's wrong? Who fucking knows? Who fucking cares? It's not about that. It's not about getting millions to sit around and do nothing. But anyways, the point I'm trying to get at is the doctors and these rich fucks, they donate money. They give money away. Loads of money. And you can say, okay, 1 million for a doctor who makes, let's say the doctor makes $4 million a year, and he's been doing his practice for 20 years, and he gave away $1 million. Well, 1 million to a guy like that, he's got fucking millions in the bank, that's nothing for him. Okay, all right, that's a percentage. That's fine. But if you're making $32,000 a year and you've been working for 20 years, and you gave away, what's the equivalent of that? 10 grand? Or even $1,000. Let's just go with $1,000. All right? Have you fucking done that? Hell no. The only charity you do is you get a chocolate bar for fucking $2. But it ain't fucking charity because you're getting something. You say, well, they get a tax write-off. Hey, you got a tax write-off too. You can use it as a tax write-off all you want. Just because yours is less than his doesn't mean it. Scalable, right? You use the fucking scale to judge it. You make peanuts. He makes fucking plenty. But he gave away $1 million and you never even gave away 1,000. The only charity work you do is something like 50-50 where you have a chance to win and shit like that. And it's not even going to help anybody. Or maybe it is. And maybe I'm just misjudging you. Point is, though, if you're only doing a $25 or $50 a year to a fucking 50-50 draw, right? And let's say you make $50,000, $40,000, $30,000 a year. You've been working for 10 years. So 10 times fucking 50 is what? $500? You're not even at 1,000 yet. And I don't even think that percentage is right, to be honest, though. But anyways, because, 1 million, if you're making 9 million a year, would be more like, if you're making 32,000 a year, then it'd be more like fucking, I don't know. It'd be more like a fucking 1,000 or like 10,000, to be honest. Maybe not quite like 5,000 or something like that. It'd be a hell of a lot higher than 1,000. But anyways, only point I'm trying to fucking make, and I say I'm good at math. I'm fucking butchering it today. I'm fucking tired. Not much sleep last night. But anyways, point of all that was just to say that, before you go and judge the fucking greedy fucking doctor who only gave away $1 million and who has a pro bono practice where he's fucking looks at clinic or people for free, and sometimes when they go do their clinic hours, it is for free, going to the fucking the walk-in clinics. You're going to get a fucking $10 note so you can go, so you could skip and have the day off, right? And for you to have a day off, you got to go bug a doctor and add to his day, and you're going to get mad at him? Does that make any fucking sense? That's why he charges you for the fucking $10 fee. He probably isn't making any money at that clinic. He's probably doing that. It's probably a volunteer community hospital. Don't get paid for that shit. I mean, not always anyways. There are certain ones that do, and that's why you see more coming up because there's a demand for it. But it's normally a government funding thing, and, they volunteer time and shit like that. Point is, it takes a long time because people are rude dicks and wasting their time. And if you think it's easy just to figure out what people have wrong with them when we're fucking lying and not being honest with ourselves and not being honest with the doctor, and they got to come up with something and risk the fact that misdiagnosing somebody else getting sick, having a life on their conscience, like if you think that's a fucking easy job and they should just be in and out 15 minutes every person. Here's your fucking note. Here's your script. Fuck it. You probably don't have cancer. You're fine. Go out. Oh, you probably don't have a fucking contagious fucking infection. Just go out. You know what I mean? Oh, it's okay. You're not going to lose your leg today. It's fine. You think they should do that fast? Then you're fucking stupid. Get yourself in order. Stop judging other people. If you have time to fucking make rash judgments about a fucking doctor, then you're not doing something right. All right? And if anybody who listens to me is like that, then I'm sorry I went into that for so long. Because, I was just trying to talk about the charity thing. Because it's a misconception, right? Is there asshole doctors? Is there dick doctors? Is there pervert doctors? Of course. But there's perverts and everything. You got the fucking welfare perverts. You got the disability perverts. You've got the fucking welfare psychos. You got the disability psychos. Just like you got the fucking Tim Hortons food chain fucking psychos and perverts. Just like you got the fucking working class psychos and perverts. Just like you got the municipal government fucking working class or municipal government fucking psychos and fucking perverts. And then you got them on the provincial level, and you got them at the federal level. You got them everywhere. You got them within the rich societies and the highbrow societies and in the fucking queen societies and across the fucking water in the States. You got them everywhere. Every class has got them. Even if you're an oppressed fucking group. All right? You can be the newest oppressed group that there is. But within your little faction, you guys are going to have some kind of fucking weirdo / psycho in there. Whether they infiltrated it or they are one of you and they just got the fucking wires crossed at a young age, who knows? That's up for debate. But point is, there's a one among all of us. And you can judge them or you can try to help them. And if they're beyond help, well, you can help yourself and stay the fuck away from them. Anyways, I don't know where I was going with this, but it was all started from that quote. And today I didn't really know what I was going to talk about. I just wanted to start talking and eventually get to a point. I might need to listen to this shit over again to see what the fuck I'm saying. But anyways. All right. So I'll bring it back to at least the lie part. I was talking about people. And, you know, they say, once a cheater, always a cheater. And once you lose trust, you never get it back and all that. So I'll continue on that since that's the oldest fucking thing I can remember that I kept getting sidetracked off. And I'm very sorry for this, guys. This is my ADHD. Or maybe it's just my Mercury. You know, it's Mars Day today. Yeah, you can kind of maybe hear the passion in my voice about this shit. But it's true, though. I think every person is different. I know every person is different. Birth chart and all that. This time of month for me, I'm not gonna say that because you know you go on the Higher Self channel and people will come on there talking about the new astrological energies, the new moon energies, the full moon energies, you know, the moon in this, the moon in that, whatever, blah, 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 blah. And sometimes they'll say, oh, a big shift's about to happen. You know, I always get the shifts before everybody else. So I feel energies more before people. And it was huge for me. I just I just shook it off now. And so you guys are in for a good one, you know. Shit like that is just kind of like, my God, what's the point in saying something like that? So if I ever say something along those lines, I hope you don't take it that way because I don't mean it that way. But from my own personal chart and my own personal shit, okay, being that Taurus, May is the month I was born in, May 11th makes me a Taurus, right? Well, from October to November, and I would probably say the line might be, wouldn't be October 11th, I don't know. It would be in October, but the equivalent of that. If the 11th is where I start, so maybe it would be October 11th, going to like November 11th, might be the line of the month, basically. So there's more October than there would be November, technically. But anyway, so around that line, okay, around that mark, because it's technically before Scorpio, but it's the part of the year when we're into my subconscious's domain. Because when I tell you your AC is like your conscious and your DC, your descendant line, is like your subconscious, I'm not just saying that metaphorically. That's not just like this little cliche line that I'm throwing out there all fucking just loose and don't give a shit and it doesn't mean much. No, I fucking mean that. I mean that. I mean your subconscious is going to be, it's going to relate to whatever that house and sign and potential planets are there. That's what it's gonna be about. And mine is mainly in the sign of Scorpio. My line is directly in. Sorry, I was thinking about the house and all that. It's directly in the line of Scorpio. It's in the 6th house, which is one of my biggest houses, which makes sense because the opposite side. Now it doesn't touch on my ascendant, but that's where my ascendant starts. Right, my first house starts. Boom. Whereas this one, I believe, I don't know. It must finish off my 6th egg. It must be between my 6th and my 7th, right? I don't have it in front of me, but no, now that I think about it, it's got to be between my 6th and my 7th, because that line stops something. So it's right between my 6th and my 7th. And right off the top of my head, I don't know can't think of. I know the seventh one is about your marriage, and or marriage is one of the aspects of it. So I'm gonna get that up here in a second there, but before I get into that, but something I want to say important about that. But back to just to finish off at least one idea so far. I know I'm going to listen to this later and be like, man, I left 4 ideas open, never got back to them, and then created 4 more and never got back to them. It's going to be brutal. But anyways, it's not as easy as just saying, once a cheater, always a cheater, or you lost trust, your relationship's doomed. It's not that fucking simple. That's not true. It's not once a liar, always a liar. It's not fucking true. It depends on the person. If that person is actually, like I said, I was willing to do whatever it took and show her whatever it took, and I really meant it. Because some guys will say, hey, they'll cheat on you, let's say, and they'll give up their Facebook, give up their phone, give you their passwords, do all that. And then a couple of months down the road, he's got a new password on there you didn't know about. Oh, sorry, baby, I forgot to tell you. And then he tells you it, keeps it there for a few days, and then changes it again. Keeps changing it over and over again, gives you a stupid excuse. Or you don't see his phone around places because he's leaving it other places. Or it's always off, or you're saying it's dead, or dead. There's always something weird. That man doesn't really want to fucking change. Or he's habitually stuck. But it's the same outcome for both of those. And that's where it gets twisted. Because you'll see people who don't want to change, pretend they want to change, just to keep manipulating. And you'll see people who really want to change, who put a good, hard effort, but because it is tied into their subconscious, which I'm about to talk about, but it's tied into their subconscious, they cannot change it. They cannot change it until they change it. The only way to change that is to actively not do it, replace it with a new habit is, I think, the best way to do it. But to tackle that head on, face it, break it down to where you make the choice to do whatever that is. You have to take it down to that fucking moment and choose the opposite choice. Because if you really wanted to stop cheating, you'd get rid of that fucking phone, change your number, get rid of Facebook, let her have the fucking phone when you're around her the whole time, if you really meant it. If there was nothing to fucking worry about, then what's the issue, right? If you really fucking meant it. And, if you really mean it, and, she's your girl, and you told all the other girls I can't see you anymore, right? And then you tell them to stop texting, and they end up texting you again, and she's got your phone. Well, what are you worried about? It doesn't fucking matter, right? Why can't she send him a text? There's no reason for her to be a bitch, although she'll want to be, especially if she caught you cheating. I'm just saying, though, you can be polite and say, no, sorry, he's with me. He wasn't joking. He's not going back to his old ways. Please stop messaging him. I would have more respect for you if I would do the same for you if your man was messaging me. So please stop messaging my man. Something to that effect, We can show people politeness and, and then maybe now that girl is not sleeping with him, maybe if that man takes responsibility for his actions and actually tries not to do this anymore, he can salvage what he has and have something meaningful with that woman, the woman he's trying to patch things up with. And maybe the women that he was sleeping with casually, we'll stop thinking that, well, maybe he'll stay one of these days. Maybe I'll let him meet my parents. Maybe they didn't even know he had a girlfriend or something like that. Point is, everybody's life can get better when you choose to make a choice. That's what Peterson says, that you can either decide that you're meaningless and your life has no meaning, and this way you can just do whatever you want, and, it doesn't matter. But then you just live a nihilistic life, and, you don't have any purpose, so everything's just kind of blah, and, what's the point, right? You can just step into desperation pretty simple. I wouldn't say anxiety, because anxiety is normally a stress-associated thing, and depression can happen as a result of being overstressed and not knowing when the bills are going to come, and, going into substances or doing things to try to avoid things you don't want to deal with. But anxiety, I'd say, would be more for somebody who's, maybe a little more manic or neurotic or high in neurosis, as Peterson says, who's, can be very stressed out. You can get anxiety just because you're thinking about stuff that hasn't happened yet, but worrying about outcomes that haven't come to play yet, basically. But anyways, your whole life can be meaningful or meaningless, and meaningless means you got no responsibility. But if you have, and this is Peterson once again, and quote, but it's a loose translation. It's a very, I'm paraphrasing, but if you want to add meaning to your life, you have to realize that every action you take has effect on people. And he does the math, and it's something like for every one person, 1,000, and they know 1,000, and then that's like 1,000,000, and then it turns into like 1,000,000,000, and that's just like going down like fivefold or something like that. But anyways, point is that man who decided to stop cheating, showed his girlfriend, wife, whoever, that he meant it, that he loves her, he still cares for her, his actions were good there. And she's going to be leery at first, but she's willing to give him a shot. And that's also good. Back and forth, they have this reciprocal, beautiful thing happening. And sometimes, how do you stop cheating? Well, you get caught cheating, you realize what you're about to lose, and you never fucking do it again. I haven't done it because, cancer could have taken my wife away. A car accident could have took her away. I know how valuable she is to me. I know how easy it could be to lose her. And so I do magic to make sure that never happens, and I make sure I've never fucking taken her for granted, or I try not to. But yeah, so they made their life better. He's made his wife's life better in turn. She made him feel better, happy about it. And then that girl, or all the girls that he's never going to fuck, they might turn around and, be sad for a little bit, but then, ultimately be able to move on and make their life better. So that has a profound action. Maybe he had kids with them. Maybe he starts seeing his kids more. He puts his time into there, treating them, Point is, not every person who is a liar or a cheater is sincere or is fucking two-faced. So it's not as simple as once a cheater, always a cheater. And it's not as simple as everybody can change. It's, if you're ready to change, you got to really fucking mean it, and you got to do something about it. Showing big action. Once again, it's the same thing. One of the first things I talked about today was, you do magic for something. And I said you never go off the couch. You're waiting. Oh yeah, the ideas. If you're sitting on the couch waiting for ideas to happen, and then you're just gonna make a podcast when these ideas just start coming to you, and then boom, out of nowhere you're gonna become rich, but you haven't moved off the fucking couch to do anything. You're just sitting there waiting around for it. We haven't put any action towards it. Well, it's the same concept. Everything basically comes down to the same fucking principle, and I'll maybe talk about that after if I have time. But yeah, if you don't put action towards doing something, figure something out, researching something, going somewhere, learning something, and then getting the knowledge for it, because you can't just get knowledge from nothing for doing nothing. All right? But, there are things, that's why the meditation to focus on a point, so you're focusing on a point. You're trying to get only the information that has to do with that point. And the more you do that, you're getting more and more information every day. As you do that, you get so much information on one point, and you start seeing the correspondences to everything. Before you know it, you're going to say there's no difference between learning the hard way and taking a vaccine. And you're like, what? How does that make sense? Well, taking a vaccine, and I'm not saying I'm for or against vaccines. I think if what we read is true about, could be causing autism and shit like that, then yeah. And I know I've done my research about it too, and you're adding different DNA into people, and that's never good. You know what I mean? The wrong DNA strands into our body, and have to, that's not good. But in the same sense, to make your body stronger, to fight something, this is supposed to happen. This is supposed to be the process that happens naturally. All right, your body's supposed to naturally fight these diseases off, fight these colds off. The problem is we mask them up with antibiotics and shit like that, and then we are susceptible to every disease, not just the one or the infection or virus we had, but all the other ones on top of that. So we make it worse for ourselves instead of making it better. So they're putting the flu virus in everybody, I don't know if it's good or not. I'm just going to use it as I don't think it's good. I don't take it. But just to use the metaphor or the simile, you put the flu virus in your body, so your body builds up antibodies to fight that flu virus, right? So essentially, you get sick so you don't get sick again. So by making the wrong mistakes to learn the right way, well, you got into that fight, got in trouble, got suspended from school, got kicked out of school, whatever, got into a fight, got arrested, and then you never got arrested again. it scares you straight, basically. It's the same thing. So everything comes down to that principle. Wrong leads to right. Dark leads to light. Hot leads to cold. Cold leads to hot. Plus leads to minus. Minus leads to plus. You know what I mean? It's all the same thing. The pendulum goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth. It's all the same thing. We're all in the mind of God. Okay, well then God's in the mind of his God, and in the mind of his God, and the mind of his God, and the mind of his God. You know, you can, everything that is different. This is one of the fucking Hermetic principles. There are no opposites. There are no opposites. The truth is the same as the false. They're the same. There's no true, there's no false. They both are. Why is that? Because whatever I believe and whatever you believe is real to us in that moment. So how can what I say is true? Is it true that everybody eats? You know what I mean? You would say yes. Well, there might be somebody out there that doesn't eat. Technically, a baby inside of a mom is not eating. They are drinking through a fucking crazy straw, you know, the fucking umbilical cord. Point is, everybody's truth isn't everybody's truth. Everybody's false isn't everybody's false. And people can thrive within a religion and get what they want. People can thrive within a magical system and get what they want. People can thrive within, fucking, I don't even know, but everything is possible to everybody. God, our creator, whatever you want to call her, Mother Earth, plus, you know, a creator, or maybe the creator is our Mother Earth, or maybe it's both, or whatever the case is, whatever made us, we are part of, we have their powers, so we can do the same shit they can do, basically. You know, that's what it comes down to fundamentally. So whenever we think of something and we make that a belief in our mind, then that becomes a belief in our reality. That means we created the limitation and the structure that we're going to make our life around, basically. And people will say, oh, belief systems are bad. No, they're only bad if you have bad ones in there. They're only bad if you let your mind be taken control of. This is the thing people don't get. The power to program your own mind and put a belief system in there, or a program in there, whatever you want to call it. Put a habit in there. Put an addiction in there, okay? Doesn't matter what words you use. Addiction, belief system, let's say. Or let's put belief and habit are positives, you know, one is air, one's fire, and let's say addiction and program is one's water and one's earth, all right? So they're both negatives. The other two are positives, but they're four directions. So it's not like one positive, one negative. Now we have two positives and two negatives, okay? So, but, two things be positive. But anyways, we're not going to get into that. But let's just say that, okay? Okay? It doesn't matter, all right? To somebody else, programming your kids might be a good thing. Listen to Jordan Peterson. They're talking about how in Scandinavia, the furthest equality place in the world, and the kids are getting further apart. And some of the arguments against him from some of the women were, okay, well, isn't that due to programming? Isn't that due to programming or advertising? But they actually said predictive programming was one of the things they actually said out loud. And advertising that girls play with Barbies and boys play with trucks and stuff like this, and this will make our men like this and girls like this. And he said, yeah, that has something to do with it to a certain extent and all that. And then the woman said, as after all that, as one of the resolutions, that they should do things to make it more acceptable. We'll give the girls toys with girls that are working in computer labs and boys being school teachers and shit like that. And I'm like, okay, so your argument was predictive programming, and your solution is more predictive programming, just in the way. I'm like, okay, so your argument was predictive programming, and your solution is more predictive programming, just in the way you think is better. Debate on your belief. That's the thing I like Peterson, okay? He does have beliefs and he does say things that he thinks are right, but he says it when it's what it is. And when it comes to something like this, he's just stating you the facts, that everybody thought this was going to happen, but they were wrong. This happened and no one could have predicted it. He's not pointing the finger. He's not laughing and everybody's attacking him like he fucking did it. And he doesn't get it. he's not, I'm sorry, I don't mean like he doesn't get it, but he's like, I don't understand why this is so hard for everybody to understand. Why is it such a big deal? What if your kid wants to be something, they want to be something. If they don't want to be something, they don't want to be something. But for that woman to say when she said that, like, my God, did she not hear herself? And here's the thing. I went to Walmart because my daughter's birthday is October 25th, so it's coming up. Went to Walmart to look at toys. And when I went there, I saw that. It was a girl, she must have been she had, it was a girl scientist. Because at first I thought she was a doctor, but then she had like a molecule symbol on her arm. So she had a girl scientist, and they had a girl with a laptop and a fucking shirt and pair of pants on with glasses and long hair. These were two dolls. So I actually saw it in the Walmart here in Canada, how they were doing that. Now the boy toys didn't have that shit yet, but the girls' toys did. And here's the thing. Women are doing this to other women now. It's not even men. Women are scared of this patriarchal tyranny. Okay, and I'm not saying all women. I'm not judging. I'm sorry. I don't mean all women or anything like that. But anyways, these women I see debating Jordan Peterson are thinking that they've been oppressed by men, and they don't want to be oppressed by men, and they think that girls aren't getting paid as much because it's not equal. And I have no way of knowing if that's true or false, so I'm not going to touch it. Okay, but for this, I see the obvious hypocrisy that they're going to say they've been tyrannized by men, and these are the little girl in them screaming out because something happened to them as a child, and probably bad, because not all women are saying this. There's not all women that want what these liberal women do. And I think generally women like seeing women go out there and fight for something they love and fight for women's kind. But for the most part, when a woman doesn't really agree with it, they don't really care either, at the same sense, But there's a certain amount of, like, oh, good for them kind of thing. That's cool. Go girl. I wouldn't have the balls to do that. You can admire them, but in the same sense, it's like, well, I don't really care though about that. And here's the thing. These women are gonna dictate what all the women and children in the world get to see and what are exposed to. If they, you know what I mean? If they decide that, okay, we're going to do that here, well, that means all the toys, all the TV shows, everything that your child's exposed to is going to be changed. Therefore, your little girls aren't going to be into the same thing that you were when you were a little girl, And you can say, okay, well, I was programmed, I was tyrannized, I was whatever, but you turned out the way you are. And if you're a pretty decent person, well, whatever happened to you as a child is a result of that, or you become who you are in spite of that, and you managed to go above it. Now, everything I just said about first something happens, and then, how the virus, you can take that, put the virus in your system so you never get that virus again. Like I said, I'm not for vaccines, I'm just using it as an example. And for a kid getting in trouble at school, you get in so much trouble that it scares you straight, right? How does someone become on the right side? Well, they were pushed by the left so much that they went to the right, and vice versa. How do you get sick of all the nice hot weather? Well, you fucking have too much of it, and then winter comes, and then you get sick of winter, and then summer comes. Everything comes back in cycles. But anyways, so by women either thinking they were oppressed or being oppressed, because I'm sure there was some of it, because, we're men. But I don't know. I mean, I'm sure there's some crazy men out there, and maybe it's just the time I grew up in, and with a sister and a mom. But when I'm around women, man, I love it. I fucking love it. And I don't feel oppressive. I feel like I got to impress them. I got to be my best. In front of guys, I don't give a shit, say what I want, do what I want. And I'd be more likely to bully and stuff like that. There's bullying within our genders, I think, more than bullying the other gender. That's just an observation from when I was a kid to now, and I don't know how it was for other generations, because how could I? I can only know what happened for me in my specific generation, but it doesn't mean that's the same for all generations of my generations. But anyways, point is, when I was around women, I fucking loved it. I was my best. I acted my best. And that's something that takes over instinctively, And I don't think the depictions on TV, just because they show what they show, doesn't make it all accurate. Does that not mean behind closed doors that men abuse women? No, of course they have, they did, and they probably still will. But that's because it's a sick individual there. There are women that get with men and do the same thing. Depending on the size of the woman, the strength of the man, sometimes the man gets hurt, sometimes the man doesn't, because that's one of those things where women are more aggressive than men, but men abuse or hurt women more than women hurt men. So we get the bad rap, but technically women are more aggressive than men are. So, but anyways, the point I was trying to say was, I made the case earlier for everything as above, so below, as within, so without, right? There's your 4 signs again. Like I said, 2 pluses and 2 minuses. There's a cause and effect, right? There's always a cause and effect for you, for everything. That's why the 7 hermetic principles are the key to life, because within them, they all basically say the same thing in a distinct, different way. And there's no opposites. Everything is the same. However, just because there's no opposites doesn't mean things don't transition from one place to the next. So what happens if you were a kid and you were bullied in high school? Well, you're going to take that and you're either going to, do yourself in, or you're going to become the strongest motherfucker, able to withstand ridicule and people being an asshole to you. You'll be able to work in spite of that. You're going to be able to get good grades in spite of that. You're going to be able to learn in spite of that, so that when you enter the job force, you're going to be faster than everybody, because you're not going to be self-conscious. You're not going to be one of the fucking fake people that were in high school who just follow trends and just pass and then have a job now, and they're in their job trying to do good or whatever, but they're always worried about what other people think and all that. You didn't have to do that because you phased that out completely. You went through an initiation on its own. I'm telling you right now, that's a powerful thing. And that's why I say you don't have to just find a spirituality like witchcraft or ceremony magic to do this shit. Because if you were someone who was bullied and you've been able to transmute that and live in spite of that and go on, and you've dealt with it in a proper way, because, there's a chance you maybe suppressed it and all that. But if you dealt with it and you decided, you know what, I'm me, I'm who I am, these fuckers are just being insignificant little fucks trying to make themselves feel better at the expense of me, and fuck them. I'll show them. If you did that in a way that, you're dangerous, and you put that danger into a good fashion, a fucking, God, I'm trying to find words, but a goal or a almost like picking your limitation, like I said earlier, but you strive towards something, using that as your focus and your energy and your tenacity and your discipline, then you're going to be far better than the rest of us, because the other people are still going to be doing what they did in high school, doing just enough that they don't get in trouble, but so they don't look stupid, whereas you have learned to block everybody out and just do a great job. And whereas in high school, the teachers didn't give you points for, you got marks and all that. It was all about marks, but in high school, it wasn't like the job force, where the job force is you can care about your job, you don't care about your job, right? And adults can make fun of each other, but it's not like it was in high school, because we're not the same maturity level anymore. We're not children trying to find our place in the world. And, a bully or someone makes fun of people, gets people to laugh or whatever, then something clicks in their mind like, oh, people like me because I said this, so I'm going to keep saying this. But they're doing it at the expense of another person. But for some reason that sticks. There, as you get older, especially with the TV we're exposed to telling us all this stuff is bad, which it is, but people are less drawn to that, and people are more likely to stick up for somebody like that. And not only that, but, if someone shows talent in a job, there's room for advancement. Where in high school, there's room for advancement in the way of you can help the teacher, you can do extracurriculars, you get better grades, you get some freedoms and all that, but you don't move up within the school company or anything like that. Whereas at work, you can. So someone who gets good grades in high school, who tuned everybody out, is going to have a far better chance, because they're going to get to university or college, or they get into the work field and they're extraordinarily better at everything they do, because they went through that initiation, they went through that tyranny, they went through those life lessons early, they got them early. And anybody out here who's listening to the sound of my voice who went through a struggle like that in high school, okay, because I didn't, all right, and I seen it happen, and I stuck up for some of the mentally handicapped people that happened to, and I even stuck up for some of the people I went to elementary school with whenever people were doing that. And you know what, I was part of the quote-unquote cool kid crowd, but the one thing I do take pride in is our cool kid crowd was, we had jocks, we had skateboarders, we had punks, we had fucking preps, we had every different class. We didn't judge on what kind of clothes you liked, what kind of music you liked. We judged on a person's character. And by the time I was in grade 11 and 12, there was nobody, now at least not when I was around anyways, I'm not saying I ran the school, because that's not the case, but at least when I was around, or I wouldn't associate with them, right? there were some of the kids that would be the less popular kids that would make fun of some of the even less popular kids than them. Okay. And those are the people that I actually fought against, or fucking, I would say something to, or we're picking on somebody, you know what I mean? I never had to do it to one of my friends. You know, it doesn't mean some of my friends didn't do that, but they knew I didn't stand for it, because they seen me right in front of the fucking vice principal the one time, put a kid against a locker because he was clicking behind a kid's ear. And it was a mentally handicapped kid who didn't like that, who would freak out, and everybody knew that. And he was trying to be a big fucking tough guy. And the principal was walking by, saw him do it, and I don't know if he wasn't going to react or not, but I react first. I grabbed him, I put him against the locker, and I told him, you do that again, I'm going to knock you the fuck out. And guess who got brought to the office? Me. The other kid eventually got called, but still, you know, well, snapping your fingers, Corey, isn't a bad thing. It's not a bad thing when that kid doesn't like snap. Anyways, I'm not going to get into that, but point is, wow, I'm way off the point again. But anyways, yeah, so anybody listening to the sound of my voice right now, whether you are still in high school or college or whatever the case is, and you're not on the popular scale of things, just understand it as, first of all, the first thing I said in this, that understand that things change. Only constant that happen, that things change, okay? And the important part to know about that is the measure of the swing to the left, let's say that's the bad side, is the measure of the swing to the right. So don't make it worse for you, but just go for the fucking ride and let the tides turn on their own. All right? When opportunities present themselves, don't say no to good things because you think they're too good to be true. All right? Don't ever want to be that guy like, oh, fuck. What if that was something I should have said yes to? Always say yes to opportunities that aren't going to put you in danger or hurt you or put you backwards. You know what I mean? But if you're one of these people that have been oppressed in a bullied kind of way, you know, someone made fun of you, some fucking guy or girl was a dick to you or did some prank on you and never got over it and all that, okay? You do need to work on if you're holding that against that person. And the good way to know if you're doing that or not, in case that was your question, is, okay, well, if you were to walk out of your house and you saw that person walking right by you, right in front of you, whether they looked at you or not, you know, and if you have trouble finding a reaction, then try to visualize them looking at you and saying, hey, and whatever name they called you in high school. That might spark something. But if you see them walking, what's your reaction? Are you mad? Are you going to give them a piece of your mind? Or are you going to go up to them and pretend like nothing happened? Because that one, I think, is the most dangerous out of all of them. If you were pretending like nothing happened and not giving a piece of your mind, I'd say you're still oppressing that shit. The healthy way would be, hey, you know, you're pretty bad to be in high school. You know, the typical cliche fucking movie fucking thing that happens. And I know that's cliche to say. That's why I call it a cliche. But it's true. That's what you should do. Not all movies are fucking being predictive programming and telling us what apocalyptic bullshit's going to happen. You need to understand that the thing the movies show you create the apocalyptic program, not the other way around. And anybody telling you otherwise is an idiot or working for the other side. But anyways, that would be the healthiest way, you know, going out there and beating the crap out of them would definitely make you feel better, maybe even the score, but then you're going to probably get bad karma from that, and then that person may not forgive you, hold a grudge against you for doing that, you know, and then your cycle's just going to keep going back and forth, because then whenever 20 years later, whenever you're older, maybe this person now went through their initiation phase, and maybe that's necessary. I don't know. Who am I to know? But all I'm saying is all that would do would bring on more, you know, and by you releasing and forgiving that person, you know, trying to be as sincere as you possibly can within that frame, you know, because, you know, whoever created us and all this doesn't expect you to be a fucking angel or a saint and be able to just see the person who bullied you for years and years and made your life a hell, to just forgive them. But the fact that you're going to try and transcend that, the fact that you think making the world is a better place, to even the sacrifice of that you had to take in high school, and the sacrifice, all those feelings you're feeling inside, and try to put that aside to be the bigger person. You know, if you're willing to even just try that, or even think about it, conceptualize it, and let it go, you know, whether it's you see the person in real life or you're just visualizing it, like I said, or working it out at your table with a pen and a paper. The fact that you're willing to do that shows us that we have hope. And that's what the Creator, whoever he is or she is or it is, wants for us. wants us to be able to go through the good and the bad and be a good person doing it. Or we got to define what humanity is, I guess, but that's what we're trying to do here. That's the whole goal. But yeah, that's what I would say. If you are going through that right now, don't fret, okay? I know you can't celebrate because it'd be a hell of a way or a thing to celebrate about. And that wouldn't make any fucking sense for me to tell you to celebrate and be happy about it. However, if you were able to do that, you would own it and you'd flip your circumstances almost overnight. If you're able to be happy about it and just fucking be yourself and just, well, thanks for teasing me, bud. I really appreciate that. Well, what the fuck? What do you mean, what do you appreciate that for? You're a fucking loser. I'm making fucking fun of you. Well, no, I appreciate it because the more you do it to me now, the less it's going to happen to me later in life. I'm going to be set. You're going to be fucked over, bud. So I appreciate your sacrifice right now. You're sacrificing your 20s and 30s later on there for, you're going to have a shitty job and all this responsibility. That's what you're sacrificing right now by teasing me, and I'm going to have a great university and college life, and then I'm going to fucking have a great fucking sick career, and I'm going to make a change in the world. I'm going to have money. And I really appreciate it, bud. So go nuts, man. People say high school is the best time of your life, but that's bullshit. And the best time of my life is what I get to make it. Right now, I'm just being told what to do, and my parents don't know any better, so I'm forced here. But once I'm out of this fucking shit, I'm on my own, bud, and you can have these 4 years, bud. I want the next fucking 50. So thanks. I really appreciate it. If you said that to him, I don't know how that would go, but that's truly what I believe in my mind. And I'm not going to lie. I'm living proof of that to a certain extent. I did some nice, kind gestures in high school, but I was kind of a bully and oppressive, and I kind of pissed away my high school. I took it for granted. I ended up passing and all that, but then I went to college and I pissed that away, And I don't regret anything because I love my family. I love my kids. I love my wife, but I didn't have to sacrifice anything in high school. I didn't have to go through anything shitty. And likewise, because I just fucking, after grade 10, whenever my girlfriend moved away and I got into this little pissed off stage, because I thought I was in love, but I wasn't. But when that happened, I just stopped caring a little bit. And it's shitty, but we don't prepare our children good enough for that. And it's not my parents' fault because they wouldn't have been prepared for that. Actually, they probably were, because my parents were the type that, didn't do much. I don't think, but I have no way of knowing because me and my dad never had a conversation. But I'm pretty sure my parents were both virgins when they met, and they weren't living together. And when they got married, the money from their stag was a down payment on their house, and after their wedding, they moved in together. And my parents are still together today. So if you think Jordan Peterson's fucking stats about people who are married and more likely to stay together versus people that don't are quack and fucked up and wrong, I got a statistic to add for that, and that's what happened with him. All right, that's what he said, and that's what's going on with my parents. So, is it crazy? I don't know. Maybe it is better for that element of surprise. Maybe there is something to that. Maybe this age of Aquarius thing that we're all switching around is a deception and shit like that. But it doesn't have to be. For every bit of bad, there's some good. So whether we're in a good time right now, then yeah, we're going to see a little bit of bad. And if we're in a bad time right now, well, we're going to see a little good. There's always hope, and there's always going to be change. There's nothing to worry about. So if you're that person being bullied and all that, well, you're going through a fucking self-transformation process. You're going through an initiation process. And hell, you're not even doing it consciously like I am. I had to pick this. I had to lose a job to do this. I had to fucking and get a mortgage and 2 car payments, and then have to fucking struggle and learn magic just to keep up because of, that stupid shit I wasted away in high school. So if you're lucky enough to have already gone through that, and you know what I'm saying is true, or if you're lucky enough to be going through that right now, do your best to grin and bear it, or just don't make it worse, all right? Watch my video about the pendulum swing thing. Do not make it worse, because making it worse is just going to, well, obviously, it's self-explanatory. It's going to make it worse, but you don't want to make anything worse. Because, sorry, that's fucking pain in my side there. I had to sit down for a second. And what I mean by making it worse is, adding to your effect, basically. Because your cause and effect is always one of the Hermetic principles, right? Cause and effect, okay? Cause and effect goes along with the Hermetic principle of rhythm, all right?
And with polarity, cause and effect and rhythm, this is basically what my video is about. So I'll try to nutshell it real fast for you, though, in case you don't know. But by using those three together, so the polarity is going to be, you're going to have a polarity towards your pendulum, your law of rhythm, which is the pendulum. When I say pendulum, I mean law of rhythm. So law of rhythm means you're going back and forth, okay? Back and forth through the pendulum swings. So you're going through life, and sometimes you're up, sometimes you're kind of in the middle, which is stable, security, basically. You know, you're right in between the bad moments and the good moments, and that's the best place to be. This is why we promote the middle pillar and being balanced and grounded and all that. But anyways, so when you're really up, really great, and then you're in the middle, and then your pendulum goes the other way, and technically it's going back up, right? Because both negative and positive are both up, technically. The pendulum going back and forth from side to side. One goes to the left, just as far to the right. But in the middle, you're in the middle. So, but anyway, so you're going on your pendulum. Well, one of those sides is going to be your plus, one of those sides is going to be your minus. That's your polarity, right? And so basically, the worse you think something is, the worse that side is going to be for you. And the best scenario, situation, life, right? Like if your best life scenario is you being rich with a hot wife, bunch of kids and all that, well, right now, the further you are from that goal, then the shitty you are, right? But if you're actively doing steps, like say you're going through school, right? So you're going through school to achieve that goal, you know, there's not necessarily a shitty place to be because you're on the road to doing that. But then, you know, you get a test and you fail. Or, you know, something happens in your family and you're not able to on your studies, so you kind of be like, well, fucking my grandma just, you know, passed away, and I'm supposed to be going to school today, this dream happened, but how do I do this now? I have to mourn her, and blah, 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 blah. So this is how the pendulum swings. It keeps going back and forth between good, your best version of your life and what you want for yourself, and striving to get that. It's not just being there and staying there, you know what I mean? But it's like on the pursuit for that, whatever you decided was your limitation, whatever you chose for that goal, that limitation. And then the other side is, well, when the bad shit happens, whenever you're trying to do that, the things that prevent you from doing that properly, the things that stop you, hopefully only momentarily stop you or prolong you or just stall you. But, you know, that's when you're on the other side. Because you still have to keep going and doing these things. You're still going to keep doing them, or maybe you won't. Maybe you'll stop. But that's what I mean by making it worse. Let's say you're going through this time in your life, okay? Because understand this, okay? If you're a person being bullied right now, if you're somebody being, you know, called names or doesn't have friends, or, you know, people, and not necessarily because people don't want to talk to you, because people will talk to you whenever they're one-on-one, but in big crowds, those same people won't acknowledge you because they're too afraid to be, you know, he's a nice guy, guys, you know, fucking, I'm going to talk to him, I don't care what you think, because unfortunately everybody's just trying to survive in high school, and some people get it worse and some people get it better. And, you know, that's how those people stay on top, is by bullying the one that won't fucking say anything back, you know. As soon as someone does say something back, well, the other part of the cool crowd, or they still get made fun of, but just not out loud, you know, kind of behind their back or whatever, but at least they're not getting fucked with every day, you know. So there is an upside to sticking up for yourself. And I'm not saying to fucking beat the crap out of somebody, use a weapon on somebody, or kill somebody. I'm saying, you know, you stand your ground and fucking say something. But in the same sense, if you're going through this right now, okay, and it's not your own undoing, right? If it's not your own doing, if you didn't do something to be treated like shit, like let's say you did something to some girl and then all the girls riled up against you, and you're going to say, well, I'm being oppressed and they're being mean to me and bullying me. Well, if you did something first, but then it's not fucking bullying, it's payback, and that's something you can count on almost just as much as change, as that if you do something to somebody, 9 times out of 10, maybe even 9.5, maybe 9.9 times out of 10, someone's going to fucking do something back. We have that 0.1 percentage that people will transmute it and get rid of it. And it doesn't mean they're not upset. It doesn't mean they don't deal with it. But they actually truly realize they don't decide to do nothing because they're not sure that they can win the fight, or they're too scared to find out, and they just cower away. But they know that whether win or lose is not going to change anything, and they rather be the change they want to see in the world, so they choose to do good instead of bad. Those people I'm talking about. That's that 0.1%. But anyways, if you're going through that right now while you're in school or in high school or even at a job, consider it this shit, because everybody goes through this shit. And you might have already had some shit and you thought maybe it was over. Maybe you had a shitty childhood or came up in a foster house or a parent died at a young age and all that. And unfortunately, we get a fucking fair deal of, say a fair deal of shit or an unfair deal of shit, and it all depends on the person. And I don't even like talking about this, because the more you talk about something, the more, whatever. But I'm confident in my ability, and I'm confident in how the universe works, that it is what it is, and you have to make the best of it afterwards. But everybody gets the shit in their life. Everybody. The person being a dick to you at school, girl being a bitch to you at school, well, her parents might be going through a divorce right now and she's fucking acting out. Or she could be just a spoiled little brat who's gotten everything handed to her and doesn't like when teachers are dicks to her, and she can't necessarily be a bitch to the teacher, so she's a bitch to the little students that she thinks she can get away with and shit like that. But, there's every fucking, it's not, like I said, it's not as simple as just, a cheater never changes or a liar never fucking changes. It's not as simple as that. But if you're going through some shit right now, understand that I'm not telling you to fucking, just move through it, unprofessionally and, so not unprofessionally, but, without acknowledging anything or dealing with anything. You should totally deal with your demons, but deal with the bad things as they come, but find a healthy way to transmute it. Don't go home and just bottle that shit up. If you put it into your work and you create habits and good ones there that you can use later on, which is kind of what the show is about now, I guess. But if you can develop them into something that works good, then you're going to be better off. Anyways, I'll get back to it. The polarity thing, I don't think I finished explaining that. So the polarity pulls into the law of rhythm, which is your pendulum, right? Polarity is each side that the rhythm thing goes. And cause and effect is what not necessarily keeps the thing in motion, but in a sense it does, because your life is a whole bunch of causes and effects. And the first few causes and effects have nothing to even do with you. Your parents met, cause, effect, they fell in love. Cause, which caused them to start having sex. Effect, they started producing children. And that caused them to keep having sex or become whatever, had to get a job or whatever. And then they affect, they had you and now you're in this world and they have to raise you, so they have to work, so they can't be at home and stay with you and give you what you exactly need as a baby, but they also have to be able to provide a house and all that shit for you. But anyways, you understand what I'm trying to get at. So every cause has an effect. So, and then you're a kid, you grew up, you don't have any cause and effect, I think before the age of 4, I want to say. And then whenever you develop your conscious mind, boom, you start getting a taste of it. But God doesn't just shoot kids in there. There's a reason why kids are innocent. Kids are wired to be mostly sweet, mostly nice, and it isn't until they start adopting the attitudes and the behaviors of the people around them that people start to dislike them, and people stop coming for birthdays and shit like that, and say, oh, he's getting too old for a birthday. But the truth is, the people don't want to come anymore. Most of the time, not all the time. You got some good kids, but then it'd be like, well, it's not fair. You kept going to their party, but your other nephew, you stopped coming to a long time ago. Well, you didn't raise that nephew, right? He's a little dick. And once again, I don't think that is that simple as that. It's just bad parenting, because you got some really good parents out there who raise some really good kids, and then some kids just don't fucking do as well as other kids. Some kids are born in different times, different planets, different everything. I mean, I'm not saying born from different planets, although that's a way to look at it, but we have the 7 planets in us. We don't need to be born from different planets. We have them within us. The whole starseed thing makes a whole lot more sense when you look at it like that. But technically, if you take out all the stuff that we're made out of, you see that in the stars, in the fucking galaxies, in space, rocks that hit the earth and shit like that. All that shit is already within our molecular system. So that's where the starseed things come from. Shit like that. But anyways, so that's your cause and effect, and cause and effect can be used to your benefit, or it could be used to to disable you and make your shit even worse. So if you're going through a rough time, all right, well, you can
cause that shit to have the reverse effect and hopefully start your pendulum going the opposite way. And what I mean by that is, well, first of all, doing what I said, the polarity things, doing the becoming depolarized, which I learned from Frater, and initially he learned it from Kabbalah, Great Work of Self-Transformation, from, I can't even think of his name, Liam Thomas Christopher. But so becoming depolarized, doing the middle pillar, standing, putting your feet on the ground, super huge thing. Why? Well, if you're depolarized, if the things that used to be really, really good to you aren't so good, and things that used to be really, really bad aren't so bad, then your pendulum is not going up high anymore. Or there's more middle ground there, one or the other. It happens one or the other. I think there's still middle ground because you're still going to have your extremes. I mean, I've become more depolarized, but someone going around killing innocent people isn't less bad to me. It's still pretty bad, even though, I know this might be a structure in God's mind or a hologram and all that other shit, but it doesn't matter, to those families, to those people that don't know that and all that. It's heartbreaking. And because, I think a lot of people that start on this path end up having a high empathy radar, however you want to put that, because everybody has the empathy skill. Everybody's able to pick up on people's feelings. Some people are going to have specific ones. People are going to have more vague and broad ones, but everybody has to a certain extent. And, I think either that comes on board and maybe starts triggering something, or, most of the people that have specific placements, and maybe it's just everyone. I don't know. But point is if you can empathize with people and feel them, then something like that can't happen to somebody, even if you're depolarized, okay? It's going to break some polarity out of you. It's going to make you feel some type of way, either sad or mad. You're not going to feel the happy kind of way. There's no fucking way. The only way is why we make movies about that. We make a villain do something so bad that we hate him, and then we make a hero fuck that villain up. And we love him for it. And then we're so happy because the villain got what he deserved. But that's teaching everybody to keep doing the same thing. If someone's a villain in your life, well, give them what they deserve. They fucking deserve it after all. And that's the wrong thing to teach. And honestly, some people need to learn that way. It all comes back to that again. So cause and effect plays into the thing I said, okay? About how you can break down almost everything into... You have to learn the hard way. You have to have dark to have light. You have to have bad to have good. You have to have cold to feel the hot, and vice versa, You couldn't hear beautiful music without ears. There's a cause and there's an effect. If you don't have ears that hear properly, you won't hear that music. You do something too often, you're going to not make it special anymore. Whether it's doing drugs or it's fucking having sex. Well, I don't think actually sex is probably a question for that, because it's something instinctive. But you know what I mean? It's you drink too much. At first it's gonna be fun, and eventually you're just drinking because you got to keep drinking because you're trying to search that initial fun, and it's never really happening for you ever again. But anyways, point is, holy fuck, what is that? That's how the cause and effect. Oh, I'll get into a little bit more because I didn't really give you any info or anything like that. But that's how you can use cause and effect. That's one way to use cause and effect to your benefit. So if your polarity shift, okay, because we already established that the middle ground is where you want to be, right? So sometimes you're on the upswing, right? You did some overtime, you have some extra pay, you have some extra cash, everything's going good, right? You're spending like crazy, oh fuck, you're out of funds, and then oh shit, you didn't plan for that, and then oh now you're broke again for a little while until you get your next pay, and there's no more overtime, so you're gonna have to pay back some of the shit you got because you assume there's gonna be overtime, and then you come back. But when you're in the middle, is that good place where you're spending and you still have money in the bank, let's say. That's your good place right there, right? Okay, so if you become depolarized, all right, while you're doing this, well, maybe part of that becomes that, how you were spending like crazy, and that was starting your descent. That's when you started your descent. And you say, oh, it's okay, I'm going to do more overtime, it'll be fine. And then you find out there's no overtime, and then boom, you were in the fucking bad part because you had no more money, and there's no overtime to make up the extra money, right? Well, maybe it's either more overtime happens, or there's more overtime, or you get a job increase where you don't need the overtime to make it up. You have it all the time. You know what I mean? Something like that is something. But to me, it'd be more along the lines of you learn to not spend as crazy. You realize that the things you're spending on aren't useful, and you start actually saving in the bank, and saving actually gives you something to look at every week, something that you earned. So even whenever you're broke, but you still have something in the bank. So on the negative side, there's a positive there because you still have money in the bank even though you're broke right now. And then because you're happy about that, and that keeps you motivated to work, and you don't go to work all angry and pissed off and do these bad causes that give you these even worse effects, then you go back to the other side. And on the other side, okay, you're making money and you're able to keep that money in the bank. Maybe you put more money in the bank, and then you go up and you want to spend, but you decide not to spend. And then on your way down, they offer overtime. So then, okay, you get back to the other side, and it's like, well, I don't have any more money there. I'm out of money, but I'm doing overtime. So that means my next paycheck's going to be big. And this pay, I got to put extra money in that account. So now there's even more in there. So that makes you even more happy. And you're doing your overtime and you're working great. And I don't want to sound like one of those people that are telling you to work or anything like that. Okay, maybe it's Jordan Peterson. Maybe it's my life circumstances wearing off on me. I'm just using this as an example because it's finance, it's working. People will understand it. It's not the only example I can use. And I'm not telling you to go out there and get a job, because the premise I started the show on was you can stay at home, you could do magic, and you don't need to work. And I think that's important, especially for people that maybe should take care of their kids and take care of themselves and get their act right. I'm not saying it's end all be all. It's the best option for a sustainable future. But I think that if you're having hard times and you're finding it hard to go to work, well, find a way. Find a good use of your magic. Use your magic in a way that you can get 3 or 4 or 5 years off, and you can work on yourself. And this way you don't have to go to work, and you can put this shit off when you're going to work, and then never do this and make something that could have took you 3 years happen in fucking 13 years, and then it'd be like, fuck, you just lost a decade plus 3. And this way I only lost 3, right? I lost from the age 30 to 33. So that's not that bad. And I consider it a blessing, to be honest, because I got to stay home with my daughter at the same time. So that's what I want for people. But anyway, so that's why I'm using the finance. But you can see what I mean, right? So every time, because he's depolarized now and he's not, he realized that spending is silly. And, if I don't spend as much, well, then if there's no overtime, I don't make as much. And just by doing that, well, he got more overtime. And then he put more in the bank because he had more. And even whenever he was without money, he was able to see his money in the bank, and that made him happy and motivated. And it's because it's not like he doesn't have money. He has money. He can pull that out and spend it any time, but he chooses not to, which is a great metaphor for the dark side. For the dark side, that's what the difference between someone who's in touch with the dark side. It's like someone who has money in the bank and they have the discipline to not spend it. Someone who has that animal inside them, and they're dangerous, and they know they could use it, but they choose not to. You know what I mean? It's just another thing that just came to mind. But anyway, so I'm going to bring this back to one of the initial things I talked about, but I hope I overstressed that point. I don't know if someone listens to me. Is somebody being bullied or not? And if you are, reach out to me. I'd like to talk to you, and I'll pick your brain and see what I can do, And I'm not proud of being someone who bullied somebody. Like I said before, one of my best friends, he was the best man at my wedding, was the kid I bullied in elementary school. And it took a binder to the face and a pretty extravagant fight in grade 7 for me to realize that what I was doing was fucking wrong. And the guy's been my best friend ever since, and I love him to death, man. And when I think about the things I did to him, I feel absolutely terrible. But I was just a kid crying out, and I don't even know what I was crying out for. People reacted and thought I was tough, and it was part of this whole Taurus identity ego thing I decided to adopt. I was going to be this bull, this strong but sturdy guy who was not big but intimidating and scary. And instead of having my dark side there but not using it, I was using it. I was lashing it out, using it on people over and over and over again, and not for any good reason, for a worse reason ever, just to pick on people. He was a small kid, and because I was a strong guy, a strong kid in grade 7 can't. Instead of having my dark side there but not using it, I was using it. I was lashing it out, using it on people over and over and over again, and not for any good reason, for a worse reason ever, just to pick on people. He was a small kid, and because I was a strong guy, a strong kid in grade 7 can't pick up the biggest kid in the class. But if someone like me who was pretty strong, probably stronger than the most people in the class, if I could pick up one of the kids, the smallest kid in the class, but I could pick him up over my head, like in a movie, which is what I would do, and we would throw him in through the window and stuff like that. Like, it was pretty bad. It's fucking disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. And it breaks my heart to think about that. He had to go through that. But he got through his initiation early because he's a hell of a lot better than me. He made a ton more money than me whenever we were doing our illegal shit together. He was able to buy 2 houses, a truck, all this shit. Not only that, he got out of there scot-free without any fucking charges. And he still owns his house. He got his welding ticket, and he's doing just fucking fine now. So this is what I'm saying. I know from experience, if you are the bullied person and you're being bullied, then I know it's hard right now, and I don't know what you're going through, but if you can find a way to use cause and effect to your benefit without being too malevolent. Now, protection spells, giver, bud. Anything that stops people from fucking with you, do. But don't intentionally send something to somebody unless, they send it to you first or whatever, or something like that. But I'd say use protection spells, use things that bind people if they fuck with you, or use their energy against them. And when that fucks with them, it's just their own energy bouncing off you. Those are things that I would say, and I never got to do that in school technically. But point is, and I think I beat that over with the head. But here's the thing, okay? When I said in the beginning that belief systems, and then I somehow got to the whole lying thing and all that. A liar never changes and all that. And then I said, okay, we're going to say programming, and we're going to say programming, and what was it? Addiction were both the negatives, were both earth and water, and fire and air was habit and belief. All right, so those are positive and negatives. But they all mean the same fucking thing, right? But they're not opposites, are they? But technically, they can be viewed as opposites. And well, what do I mean by that? Well, if to me, I'm programming my mind, that's a good thing. But I put that in the bad column. But if I say my children are being programmed by the TV, it's a bad thing. But I just said it was a good thing. Well, that's right, because the words are just words. They're just energy. It's how people use it. That's what it comes down to. It's like the gun. The gun isn't bad. The people using the gun are bad or good. And they use it for their ends. That doesn't make the gun evil. That doesn't make the gun responsible. So just because these words are there doesn't make the words bad. Now, I said that for a reason, because if you put a program in your head, and the program is for you to have discipline, to find your passion, to clean up your house, to take extra time to play and teach your kids, to learn a new skill. You put one of those programs in your mind, you're going to reap benefit from it. You're using a cause. That's the cause. You decided to do something. You put action forth. All right? Like I said earlier, if you ask Thoth, Hermes, Mercury for info, be knowledgeable, and you just sit on your ass and do nothing, you're not using any cause. Well, how are you supposed to have an effect without a cause? You can't. All right? So polarity moves people. Polarity is energy. But cause and effect is like that energy without a fucking without a sign associated to it. However, there can be a sign associated to it. The only reason why I say without a sign associated to it, like a plus or a minus, like a positive or a negative, is because if you're doing it to yourself, you know what I mean, then it's not really bad or good. Because, I mean, I guess it'd be all for the greater good, right? And that's where, the addiction versus belief thing would come in. Habit and addiction would be opposites, and belief versus programming would be opposites, right? A belief is something that you put in yourself, and programming is something that was put in you, right? So that's the positive versus the negative. And a habit is something that probably isn't bad for you, whereas addiction is bad, or at least society thinks that it's bad for you, something to that effect. So that's why those are the good and bads, but they're all basically the same fucking thing. A habit is no different from a belief. That's no different from being programmed. That's no different from being, what the fuck was the last one? Habit, program, belief, addiction. Having an addiction. They're all the same thing. So earlier when I said if someone is addicted to lying or cheating on their girlfriend, then they have a habit built in them. And it doesn't matter if they say they're going to change. Inside, They haven't gotten rid of that belief system, that programming, that addiction, that habit hasn't been removed. This person's been doing it for so long, it's now instinctive. Remember how I said earlier how sex is instinctive? We'll probably never enjoy that. Well, put that into retrospect with what I just said with somebody who's cheating. You got something that's instinctive like sex that you probably never get tired of, except for maybe when you're older. But I'm 33. I'm not old. I'm somewhere halfway up the hill, and then over the hills at 50, I guess. But point is, you're dealing with something like that. That's why there's drugs that deal with sex are also very addictive. Like cocaine and stuff like that. You see that sexualized a lot, whereas heroin, you fall asleep, it's hard to have sex on that. Ecstasy, stimulant, you know what I mean? Even speed sometimes, right? You get high and you want to fuck. That's what these things do sometimes. And you can fuck for a long time if you can get your dick hard, basically. Not to get off topic, I'm not trying to glorify drugs, because there's nothing glorious about these addictions whatsoever. Yeah, the 3 or 4 good times I have in my mind about me being promiscuous and having a good time and throwing money around and fucking a bunch of girls and shit like that. Yeah, okay, those are good memories and great stories to tell, but you don't want to hear about all the hardships and the fucking dumb shit and the disgusting shit and the bad shit I did to people. It's not worth it. It ain't worth it, not even by a fucking little stretch. Not even if I could trade 3 up for 3, keep those 3 good memories and only have 3 bad memories and get rid of the rest. If I could do that, if I could trade that, no. It's still not worth it. It's still not worth it. I'm not saying it would necessarily change, because everything I did brought me here today, but, people like to say, I wouldn't change a thing. Well, if you've had a drug addiction, you did some questionable shit to some people, like putting people in the hospitals and then stealing from other people and, just being a bad person, lying to everybody about it, even if it's not a lie that directly affects them in any way, you know what I mean? Just lying to people over and over again it takes a toll out of you. And then that becomes a habit. So not bad enough you have the drug habit, and then you got to keep funneling the money and stealing, so you might even get a stealing habit, and then you got a fucking lying habit to people. These things are hard to fucking break after, right? And that's the thing. If you try to stop without creating another habit, your body, your mind, everything is going to try to create circumstances for you to get into that. So you can want to stop all the fuck you want. But how can you when it's programmed in your subconscious and your subconscious creates a reality? How can you stop? If someone doesn't know this information, can you understand why it would be so hard for them to stop? And now why it makes maybe a little more sense why I say, if it wasn't for magic, I wouldn't be able to stop the shit I know. Because until you know this, until you know that the people that stop drugs are not just lucky or it's just possible and you're a piece of shit because you can't do it, you know what I mean? Until you know this info, how can you ever really quit something unless by chance or by good fortune or by the grace of gods or your ancestors looking over you, or you got a bond with deity or your higher self or your spirit guides or whatever. People are following you around and blocking those situations from happening to you and get you to create a habit out of fucking pure fucking synchronicity, basically. But how else could you stop this? And that's why I think the fucking forces are all around me every fucking day. Even when I have a bad day and I blurt out some stupid shit that I fucking regret and try to take back and all that, I still thank them every single day. And I have a little powwow later on, like, hey guys, and I was being pretty fucking dumb there. Things are just tough and something I really got to work on. So any suggestions, bud, I'm open to it. I always have these little powwows with my spirits because they see this shit coming down the pipe. I don't. So if they know my intentions and know where I'm coming from and know what's up, well then, but you can't, if you don't talk to them, they're not going to know. But anyways, so back to all that crap that I just said about the belief systems and all that, about the cheaters and all that shit, okay? Well, like I said, it's going to be very hard for someone to stop cheating or stop lying, stop doing drugs, if it's built into their mind. So if you know someone like this, it's going to be very hard to bring up this topic, but, going to see somebody or, trying to get them to do something new with you, right, can create a habit. The problem, you can spend time with a person who has a drug problem or whatever the problem is, okay, a couple hours a day with them and be like, yeah, but the problem is as soon as all the noise stops and everything is done and let's say they're not asleep, they're still awake,
Well, there's so many triggers that are going to remind them of what the fuck they like about, or some good time they had, or something's going to pop up in their head to tell them, hey, you know what you should do right now? You should go get high. Or you should go call that girl and see if you can fuck her. You know, your wife's not going to wake up. She's out like a fucking light. She took her sleeping pills or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, something to that effect is going to happen. And I'm telling you this from straight up experience. You could have the greatest day and be in such a positive mood, and that's a reason to get high. And you can have the shittiest day, and obviously that's a reason to get high. And you can have just a regular normal day and be like, oh, I want to get high. You know, it don't matter. You're always going to find an excuse. And unless you can do like Peterson says, is listen to that intuition, that internal voice that is always right, and we don't listen to it, we feel stupid after because we knew better. Or you do what Friedrich Xavier says in the book Kabbalah, great work of self-transformation, says to reject, banish, deny the bad thoughts and accept the good thoughts only. If you do something like that, then it becomes a little more likely. You're not tell a drug addict to banish those thoughts. It's going to be a lot harder than maybe someone who's just banishing, you know, a random thought that comes in their mind about their own death or their financial anxiety or something like that. It's going to be a lot not as easy, but generally it's the same concept. And that's why I said earlier, that point, that moment where you chose, like I talked about the two people doing cocaine, right? The moment the one decided that he was going to do cocaine and therefore steal money out of their wallet and then not come home until very later on because, yeah, getting high was worth the anxiety and the stress they're going to feel when they get caught. And it's inevitable. They are going to get caught. It's going to put a strain on the relationship. So they chose to do that. And that's where the hurt comes from. You can use all the excuses you want. But at some point, you chose to do that. And instead, you could have talked to them. You could have said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this, and I really don't want to, but it's fucking tugging me real hard, something fucking fierce, and I don't know if I'll be able to overpower it. Can you please stay awake or try to talk me through this? Or, I don't know, maybe decide to do it with me so I don't have to do it myself, or talk me out of it, or tell me all about all our bills, or whatever the case is, you know? Just simply doing that could change everything, you know? The fact that you don't have to deal with it for a few hours is an easy way to fucking put something off from happening or to justify doing something than if you decide to ask somebody for something or ask them a silly question you know what they're going to respond to, and you get that look at you don't want to get. That's why you do it deceivingly behind their back so you don't get that. And that's going to be one of your excuses. Well, I knew if I asked you would just say this. You're goddamn right I'd say this. We can't afford it. We got our kid's birthday coming up and Christmas, and we got to put groceries in the house, and you want to go spend $120 on 3 halves, well, probably $100, but you know what I mean? Like, that's just ridiculous and stupid. I know, but that's why I didn't want to ask you. I know, but fuck, you know what I mean? It's just brutal. And no one knows that these things are deep within inside of us if we've done them for any length of time. No one is taught that these things are habitual. That from the TV to your cell phone to everything, that's what's happening to everybody on a daily fucking basis. Anyways, before I keep going though, that couple I'm talking about right now has actually had quite a bit of success. Now, after we had a lot of talks, but they ended up losing their place, and my buddy got into a little bit of trouble and all that. But nothing bad happened out of it, which is pretty fucking surprising. And more than that, they during something that happened, they were staying at a person's house, and then they were all drinking, and there was a big debacle that ensued, and my friend's girl, well, she's a friend too, but she ended up putting a rock through the window and getting in the car and smashing against a tree like that bad. Like these people are awesome people. I love them to death, but they're very in touch with instinct and not so in touch with, common reasoning goes out. They live in the moment so much so. And it's such a beautiful thing to watch because, if they had a little more discipline with that way they live in the moment, they would be, oh my God, it'd be what I would want to be like, basically, but they don't have enough discipline but they are now, though. That's the positive part because they're doing awesome, a couple times, I don't know, a couple weeks ago, she was in the car and Grant Morrison was playing in the background because one of my episodes popped up on my phone. started playing. So I tried to shut it off. She's like, no, that's the thing you wanted me to hear. And he's going through sigil magic, and she asked how to do it. And because as a result of all that shit, they lost their daughter. Like CAS came and took their daughter. And she tried to hold them at the door, but then she eventually let the cop in, and the cop tricked her, and blah, 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 blah. But as a result of that, they were having hell of a luck, and a foster family had her for a little bit, and all this shit. And then Justin told me that she started doing sigils, and they're getting a back pay in November for a pretty big sum that they had no idea was even possible. And now they're getting, they started getting visitations right, like almost instantly after she did the sigil, because she initially asked me, well, how do I get my daughter back? I'm like, well, don't start at get your daughter back. Start at visitations, then letting you see her, then having weekends and having sleepovers, and then eventually building up to that. You know what I mean? You're not going to go for the big gusto. You need money, then, do a thing for money, but don't go super big. Do what you basically need to survive, and then go bigger from there. But the bigger, the harder, and, and she has. It's all been working out. They got all these plans, and it's amazing. And then they actually have a date for, if everything goes well, when they get their daughter back, plus a bigger amount than they thought they were going to get, just through sigil magic. You know what I mean? Not even casting a circle, not doing middle pillar, not doing fucking any banishings or nothing. Just doing that. Because they've been going through their sacrifices. They've been going through their shit right now. They've been going through shit after shit after shit. And, Spirit's probably like, guys, I can't help you unless you ask. Probably like, just fucking ask and I'll help you. But the problem is the more shit they go through, the more they fucking come out swinging and put themselves in more shit. And instead of doing that, instead of fucking saying, fuck the world, if you're going to take everything from us, I don't fucking care, I'm just going to self-destruct, she decided to fucking do this. Do a couple sigils. What does she have to lose? She's making a couple pictures on a paper. Hardest thing would be to forget about it, and that's why the daughter thing's taking longer than technically the money thing's happening. But still, it's still beautiful, and I couldn't think of two people that don't deserve that to happen more than them. I would do anything for them. My wife hates sometimes when I help out people like that because she's worried about me going back into those situations. And, she's got every reason to have those doubts and all that, because I definitely gave her reason to doubt me, in the past, which is what I started this topic basically on. One of the things I started on, the money thing, but it's something I don't think I'll ever be able to stop, because I am an agreeable person. I do like people more than I like things, and I fucking love helping people. There's satisfaction in it for me. It's not just about, I don't just drive people around and talk to people just to socialize. To me, that's something I used to do. There was fun in going out and getting drunk and hanging out with friends, but that novelty died not that long ago, about 3 years ago, I'd say. And now for me, I'd rather help someone, give them information, or listen to them and see, whatever, I like having deep conversations about topics I enjoy, or, trying to help someone out, listen to them. So, yeah.
It's unlocked. And so then what that would imply is that if you got to the point where you could look at the darkest things, so that would be the abyss, right? That would be the deepest abyss. If you could look at the harshest things, like the most brutal parts of the suffering of the world and the malevolence of people and society, if you could look at that straight and directly, that would turn you on maximally. And so that's the idea of rescuing your father, because imagine that you're like the potential composite of all the ancestral wisdom that's locked inside of you biologically. But that's not going to come out at all unless you stress yourself, unless you challenge yourself. And the bigger the challenge you take on, the more that's going to turn on. And so that as you take on a broader and broader range of challenges and you push yourself harder, then more and more of what you could be turns on, and that's equivalent to transforming yourself into the ancestral father. Because you're like what would you call it? You're the consequence of all these living beings that have come before you. And that's all part of your biological potentiality. And then if you can push yourself, then all of that clicks on, and that turns you into who you could be. That's the re-representation of that positive ancestral father. So that's why you rescue your father from the belly of the beast.
So you think that this ultimate goal of sacrifice and of risking your life in order to save someone who's truly important to you, that this somehow or another maximizes your potential as a human being?
Well, I think you can think about it religiously too. So you think about it this way. So in the Christian story, for example, you have Christ does two things that are messianic. One is takes the suffering of the world onto himself. Okay, so that's a weird idea. Okay, so what does that mean? Let's think about it psychologically. Well, maybe it means that, well, that's your job. Is the world's full of suffering, and you should accept that as your responsibility, past, present, and future. You're supposed to do something about that, as much as you can about it. And maybe you start with your own localized suffering, put yourself together, but then you expand that outward and you decide that you're not a victim of that, even though, you're part and parcel of it, but you're the potential solution to that. And so you accept that as a responsibility. So that's part of taking on a load. That's part of bearing a cross. You could look at it that way. The cross is sort of a symbol of the place of maximal suffering. Okay, so you accept that as a challenge, not as something that you're victimized by. Maybe you accept that as the price of being. Okay, so that's one responsibility. You're responsible for addressing the suffering in the world. So that could give you some meaning, seems to me. And then the next thing is, there's a story, of course, that Christ met the devil in the desert. And so that's the encounter with malevolence. So that would be the other thing, because the two major problems that people face, obviously, are suffering, tragedy, and malevolence. And so that's the other thing that you're responsible for, is that you're supposed to look at the capacity for human evil as clearly as you possibly can, which is a very terrifying thing. That causes post-traumatic stress disorder in people that aren't accustomed to it. And in the mythology that's associated with the encounter with evil, it's almost always the case that the entity that does the encountering, even if it does it voluntarily, is hurt by it. So the Egyptian god Horus, for example, who's the eye and the falcon, the thing that can see and pay attention, when he encounters his evil uncle, Seth, who's the precursor of Satan, he loses an eye. Because it's no joke to encounter malevolence. It can really shake you. But the idea would be that if you can face the malevolence and you can face the suffering, then that opens the door to your maximal potential. And then the optimistic part of that is, and this is why it's so useful to peer into the darkness, let's say. The optimistic part of that is that although the suffering is great and the malevolence is deep, your capacity to transcend it is stronger. So what you get out of the most negative viewpoint is the most positive possible consequence. Because one of the things you'd like to know, if you wanted to know something deep about yourself, is that you could face the worst that there was and prevail. And I believe that people are capable of that. I think that despite how tragic life is and how malevolent things are, that fundamentally our spirit, let's say, has the capacity to confront that and to fix it, like psychologically, so to confront it courageously, to be able to bear up under that if you do it voluntarily, but also to address it. Not only to deal with it psychologically, but to deal with it practically. And that we could make things much better.
There's always a striving towards utopia, right? Like this is the ultimate goal, that if you ask people, what would you like out of civilization? Well, I'd like everyone to be happy and everyone to get along and there to be no war, nothing, no suffering, no anything. But in order to really, truly learn about yourself and about life, you have to overcome adversity. You have to experience things. And I firmly believe that in order to truly appreciate love, you have to understand and really have felt hate. And to really appreciate camaraderie, you have to feel loneliness. So this is just a part of being a person for whatever reason.
Yeah, well, maybe, see, the other thing that I've been thinking along the same lines is that, it isn't, so in the biblical stories, in the Abrahamic stories, for example, Abraham basically hangs around his dad's tent till he's like 80. He's one of these guys that fails to launch, in a big way. And God eventually gets sick and tired of him, playing video games in his basement and says, get the hell out there into the world and have a life. And so he does. He leaves his father's tent and his community and his country, which is what he's commanded to do. And then he goes out and has an adventure. But, the first thing he encounters is a famine, and then he encounters a tyranny, and then he encounters a bunch of people in the tyrannical state that want to take his wife. And so you can imagine that Abraham's response to that is like, it was a hell of a lot better sitting in my dad's tent playing video games. But what's cool about that story, what I realized when I was doing the lectures on it last year, was that that was a call to adventure. And that the right way of conceptualizing what we're talking about isn't that utopia would be a place where everyone was happy. And I think because of what you just laid out is you need that polarity, and people need a load, and we need adversity, and we need difficulty. We need all of that. So maybe what you want is an adventure, the greatest adventure that you could have. And that would involve, something to push against. It would involve real challenge. And so just see, Dostoevsky knew this, because when he wrote Notes from Underground, which I would highly recommend to everyone who's listening, it's a great book and it's a very short book. He criticized socialist utopia back in like 1860, way before it became the sort of widespread idea that it is now. And what Dostoevsky said was that, well, human beings are these very peculiar creatures, and if you gave us a utopia so that we had nothing to do but eat cake and busy ourselves with the continuation of the species, that was his line, that the first thing we do is smash it all to bits just so that something unexpected and troublesome would happen, because we're built for adventure and not for peace and happiness.
Well, we're designed to overcome the natural world. The natural world is filled with that. The natural world is filled with things trying to eat things. This is just everywhere you look, that's all you observe. You observe predators and prey and animals eating vegetables, and that's it. And I think that this concept of overcoming adversity is so human. It's so a part of what we are, that I want to bring it back to you. Because one of the things that I've been considering is that I've said this many times, and I just had a conversation with my good friend Steve Vernella the other day where he brought it up independently. He said, I think Jordan Peterson is the most misunderstood and misinterpreted guy in the world. He's like, people are always like, not just misinterpreting, but misstating what you believe in, misstating what you say. This opposition to you, this, like we were talking about this GQ interview, which I thought was... I thought that woman was far more intelligent than and her approach was far better and far more reasoned and well thought out than some of the other attacks on you before. So they're bringing in the varsity level players, is what I'm saying. It's like, but I think this is important. I think this is part of what forges this message is that you are, and and this is one of the things that Eric Weinstein and I had said about you, is that you're essentially the Hoist Gracie of the intellectual dark web. If you don't know what that means, is the early days of the UFC, no one knew what the best martial art was. And the idea was like there was all these martial arts that are running around independently, and they were all claiming that they had the best technique, and let's see what happens. And Hoist Gracie was the one who represented jiu-jitsu and went out there and beat all these people with superior technique and superior strategy.
South American?
Yes, he's from Brazil.
Brazil, yeah, okay. I know about him, yeah.
And he launched this Brazilian, and his family launched this Brazilian jiu-jitsu empire that has since taken over the world of martial arts. But you are the one who's consistently engaging with these people. You're the one who's involved in these Vale Tudo events where you're debating these people who are coming at you hostile, with notes. And I think as uncomfortable as those moments are, like, who was the woman that said, so what you're trying to say is...
Yeah, Kathy Newman.
Yeah, I think her approach... I think she misunderestimated you. I think she underestimated you. I think she misinterpreted who you are, and she thought that she could come at you with this straw man sort of article and argument rather, and frame your positions in a very unflattering way. It just didn't work.
No.
It was like the early days of Hoist Gracie. Guys would come at him flailing and he'd get him in an arm bar and they'd tap out and they'd go, fuck. That's kind of what happened with you. But now this woman who you had this conversation with in GQ, she was much more skilled.
Yeah.
She was better verbally.
Yeah.
Her arguments made more sense.
Yeah.
She seemed more reasonable, more well-read.
Yeah.
She was able to think on her feet quicker. But still, these are really important conversations.
Well, it was a funny day because I went to the hotel room in Baltimore, and I went out of my way to do it. And she was hostile to me the second I walked into the room.
Really?
Yes, and that really kind of put me off.
How so?
Well, she basically told me that we were going to have a war. Not so many words but just there was a coldness to her, and a distaste for me that was sort of radiating from her. So she was animus possessed from a Jungian perspective. That's the right way of thinking about it. One of the ways of thinking about that is that she had a chip on her shoulder in relationship to me. So she'd already formulated who I was in her imagination.
Right.
And it was also maybe a form of projection. So like I was the embodiment of all the things that she found distasteful. And that's who she was. So there was no willingness to consider on her part that I could be different than her preconceptions of me, right? And so she was hostile to me in the way that you would be if you were prejudiced against someone right from the beginning. And so by the time it was uncomfortable in the room, and by the time, and there was a photo shoot, and so by the time the conversation started, I was more impatient than I would normally be, because one of the things that I do expect from journalists, and Kathy Newman was like this, by the way, and so have some of the other people that have gone after me, at least they had the professionalism to be civil before the interview started. Right. You know, like because there's a certain amount of politeness, I would say, that not that I'm owed, but that someone you're interviewing is owed if they come out of their way to go talk to you.
It's just human decency.
Yes,
there's no real conflict, right? Until you have this conflict, it's just hello, nice to meet you.
Yeah, thank you for coming.
Two human beings interacting with each other.
Yes, on relatively professional.
Yes.
Well, even just professional, right? Even just professional grounds. It's like, well, we're both here to do a job, and I've agreed to come, but no, there was palpable enmity in the air right to begin with, and. You know, when I actually thought at the end of that interview, I thought, geez, you know, maybe I've done enough interviews, because I found that I was more impatient than I would have liked to have been. Now, luckily, it doesn't seem to have gone overboard, because I've been watching the comments on that GQ interview, and I think it's got about 4.5 million views, some ridiculous number of views. And people have said that I was more impatient and a little harsher than usual, which I think is true. And I thought, God, you know, maybe I'm starting to run out of patience, which isn't good, right?
Right.
I don't want to run out of patience.
Because then it will flavor the message that you're putting out there.
Definitely.
And people will take it in the wrong way, and they'll take it in with that bitterness.
Yes, exactly. Well, and, you know, one of the things that I think is very important is that you don't become resentful. Like, and you know, when I'm on this tour, for example, like, there's no resentment for me. Because you might think, well, this is a lot of work, and I've been running around like mad, and you know, it takes a lot of organization, and it's quite demanding, and all of that, and that's all true, and that none of that is a complaint. And I decided with Tammy right at the beginning that, well, first of all, that this was going to be work and not a vacation, because we're not stupid. We know you can't have everything at the same time. If you have any sense, you're lucky if you get some things that are good at once, you know. So we're very grateful to have that opportunity, and that I was going to continue to do this as long as I was thrilled to be in front of the audience, and then when I meet people afterwards, that I'm not looking at the end of the line to see when the night ends, you know, because I want to be sure that every single person that comes to meet me, I'm, you know, present for. Absolutely, because I am actually quite taken aback and thrilled, I guess is the right word. Grateful. That's better. That they're there. It's like, God, man, some of these people, you know, like they're coming from all over the place. You know, people fly in from Australia to Europe. They've flown. Lots of Eastern Europeans came to England. Like, they're making huge treks. There was guys who came from like they took them like 12 hours to get through Russia to come to Finland to watch the talk there. You know, and then not just a few people like that. People are really going way the hell out of their way, you know, and then they line up, and it's not inexpensive, because these venues are expensive and all of that. And I'm doing, and it's the same with the damn interviews. It's like, I'm doing my best to not take any of this for granted and not get annoyed about it. And that goes for the conflict too. It's like, well, you know, I've tried to have my agent screen out maybe the more egregious interviews, you know, the ones that would just be nothing but combat, because I find them quite stressful, though I wouldn't say I'm hiding from them. But you don't know, to begin with, how an interview is going to go, and I could just say, well, I'm done having interviews, and for a while, but I can't help but see that the conflict is a necessary part of this, even though I don't find it pleasant. Like people think, they accuse me of being a provocateur, of enjoying the conflict. It's actually not true at all. I don't enjoy it at all. It usually takes me about 3 days to recover from a particularly contentious interview. You know, because I find conflict, interpersonal conflict, quite stressful.
Yes.
You know, but I think
everyone does.
Yes.
And to pretend you're either a sociopath or you're a liar.
Yes. Well, there are people who seem to enjoy that kind of intellectual combat. You know, that they and the political types are more like that. But
but I think they still afterwards feel it, and if they read the comments and people are against them, it's just that unease. It carries.
Well, you would think so.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't even know how people deal with it because, I mean, I've been fortunate because although, you know, I've had a fair bit of negative press coverage, the comments on YouTube in particular, which is where the bulk of them are, and I would say among the general public, have been overwhelmingly positive. I don't know what the hell it would be like to be in a world where that was reversed, where, you know, the majority of people are against you.
I've seen it. I've seen it happen with guests that I've had on the show where I've met them afterwards, and you see a physical effect on them. You see them beaten down like, Jesus Christ, those comments are so mean. I'm like, you can't read those. You can't read those. And you see how it's affecting them. Like, they can't sleep. They read it.
Yeah.
It fucks with them. They'll stay up for nights. You know, it's not good. It's you're taking in all of these opinions of hundreds, if not thousands, of people that you don't even know. You don't know if they're coming from a healthy place, and most of those opinions, they would not express it that way if they were talking. Even if they could get the same message across, like, I think you were ignorant to these facts. I think you're biased in your perceptions. Even if they had an opinion that was unflattering, the way they'd express it to you, they'd be considerate about you and your feelings as a human being. And if they weren't, you wouldn't take into consideration what they're saying because, like, this guy's just an asshole.
Yeah, right.
But when you just see it in type, we just see print. It just doesn't. It could be a smart person. It could be a psycho. It could be a fool. It could be anything.
Well, it's also funny too because the negative comments that are part of social media seem to be just as potent as negative comments in real life, but the positive comments don't seem to be as positive as the positive comments in real life.
Yes.
Like, and they don't seem as real. And I guess that's partly because we're wired, you know, to be more sensitive to threat and to negative emotion because we can be hurt.
Well, it's also healthy too to not stroke your ego too much. If you're just like concentrating only on the like there's something distasteful if you go to someone's page and they just retweet all the positive things that people say to them, because then it has this sort of reinforcing side. Like, people know that if I say something really positive to Jordan, he's going to retweet me. Like, there are some people that they engage in this sort of commerce. You know, like, you say something positive, they retweet you, and you know, it's a little too strokey,
right?
You know? People get really into that, stroking their own back.
Yeah. Well, I guess the danger of that is that possibility of that ego inflation that you really want to avoid, because that's a bad idea.
Oh,
that's a very bad idea.
Well, you've done a wonderful job of avoiding those waters, because this is for a guy who's in his 50s who becomes famous out of nowhere, and doesn't just become famous, but becomes this culturally significant sort of lightning rod. I mean, that's how I view you, and a lot of these talks that you're doing, a lot of these debates like you're having with this woman at GQ, or some of your interviews. What you're doing is you're expressing yourself in a brave but very controversial way, and a lot of people are paying attention to this, but then you're backing it up with your research, you're backing it up with real science, you're backing up with a tremendous amount of history of the human race and of religion and of the scientific studies that have been done that show correlations between different types of behaviors in human beings, and all this is rich. It's very rewarding if you could take it all in. But when it goes against what people have, their preconceived notions or their own set of beliefs that they're bringing to your conversations, to your debates, then it creates this hostile battle where what you're saying is very contrary to the way they've been living their life, or these preset patterns of behavior.
Really saw that in Scandinavia. Yeah, well, I was there. I went to Stockholm twice, and Oslo twice, and Helsinki twice, and Copenhagen once in the last month, and I spent quite a bit of. There was a lot of interviews, and a lot of discussion about the so-called gender paradox. And that's a very interesting thing because it's really put their tails in a knot in Scandinavia. And that makes sense because the Scandinavians are going to have to deal with this first because they've gone the farthest down the road for like making their society gender equal.
But explain that to people.
Yeah,
They don't.
I will. Okay, so imagine first of all that there's two kinds of equality that you might pursue. One would be equality of opportunity, and so that would mean that there's wide range of talent across people regardless of their type, whatever that might be, sex, gender, race, ethnicity. There's talent distributed everywhere, and it's a kind of a truism, and I would say a truism of the West in the deepest sense, that each of the individuals within those groups should be put in a position where their talents they're encouraged to manifest those talents, partly because that would be good for them spiritually and psychologically, but also because that would be of obvious benefit to the community. Right? I mean, talent's rare, which people don't understand. There's lots of different kinds of talent, but in each domain it's rare. And so it's to everyone's benefit to exploit talented people to the maximal possible degree. So even if you're just selfish, you want to push for equality of opportunity because the more talented people there are out there, the more cool stuff you get to have, and hopefully the more diverse and interesting your life is. So you can pursue equality of opportunity policies, and the Scandinavians have done that, especially trying to knock down barriers for women in the workplace. And by all accounts, by all standard theories, the Scandinavian countries and places like the Netherlands, Canada too, to a slightly lesser degree, have gone farther than any other countries in pursuing those policies. Okay, and part of the consequence of that is that some of the differences between men and women have been minimized. So obviously there's far more women in the workplace than there were 40 years ago. And in many occupations, there's actually dominance by women. There's dominance in the universities. There's dominance in the healthcare fields. And so women have poured into the workplace. And hypothetically, there's problems with that because it's put a lot of stress on family structure. But hypothetically, that's for the best. And because it gives people a broader range of choices and it gives everyone access to more talent. So, and then also, if you look around the world, you see that one of the best predictors of the probability of economic development in developing countries is the attitude in those countries towards equal rights for women. And it looks causal. The more positively the country is predisposed to female rights, the more likely they are to develop economically. And maybe that's because that indicates that they're open to new ideas or something like that, or open to transformation. So that's one kind of equality. Open up the playing field so that everybody has a chance to compete and cooperate and land where they will. But then the other kind of equality is equality of outcome. So, and that's often described as equity in today's language. And so the ultimate equity utopia would be take every job, every conceivable kind of job, and then stratify that by every conceivable level of authority within every job. And then ensure that every single category of person is represented in precise proportion to their prevalence in the population. So every job should be 50% women and 50% men, and say 13% non-Western ethnic minority, whatever that happens to be, and then you could break that down. And otherwise there's evidence of systemic prejudice. Okay, now, first thing about that is that's impossible. And the reason it's impossible is because there's no limit to the number of ways that you can categorize people into groups. So, you know about sex and ethnicity and race, maybe those are the obvious ones, but now you have gender, and then you have ethnicity, and, and then there's attractiveness and intelligence and temperament and height and age and socioeconomic background. And I mean, let's say there's 20, but there's a lot more than that. There's no possible way that you could ever regulate a society so tightly that every single one of those groups was equally represented in every single one of those occupations at every single level of the hierarchy. That is
so they
impossible.
Want to concentrate on the significant ones, which are men and women and race.
Well, yeah, but who's to say those are the significant ones? That's the other thing. It isn't even obvious that they are, because I would say that like a more significant one is cognitive ability, because that's a way bigger predictor of long-term life success than sex or race. So I don't even think that we've necessarily identified the canonical groups. We've just decided that gender and race are maybe they're the most obvious.
Right, but isn't there a problem is that people don't, that what they don't do is they don't take in terms of cognitive ability, they don't get on a team. They don't get on, like, there's people that are sexist,
Yeah.
but it's very rare that someone is elitist in terms of their cognitive ability.
Well, hard to say, Joe. I mean, I think one of the reasons
I
that
shouldn't say elitist, prejudiced is a better word.
I don't know. You could be right, but look, I think one of the reasons that, like, here's something that's kind of
Actually, it
peculiar.
doesn't even make sense now that I'm thinking about it. Of course they are.
There's one thing that's quite peculiar about the United States in that regard. It's like most working class people, let's say, are far more irritated with the intellectual elite than they are with the wealthy elite. And that's because they think they could become wealthy. And they could. But they don't think they could become part of the intellectual elite. And it isn't obvious to me that the intellectual elite, so those would be the liberal left-leaning types that dominate the media and academia, are particularly positive in their attitudes towards the typical working class person. I think they're prejudiced and elitist. I do believe that that's the case. And I think they're also, what would you call it, patronizing. And I think that the typical working class person, say, who voted for Trump is very, very sensitive to that. And so they're much more concerned with the 1% who are the cognitive elite than they are the 1% who are the economic elite, because at least they think that's a game they could play. So, anyways.
Isn't that also because there's caricatures, right, of the 1% of the economic elite? You just think of people that are in these lofty positions that are in control of the financial institutions, but the 1% of the intellectual elite you think of in terms of, like, some of the more preposterous things you're hearing out of universities now and safe spaces and
there's that too.
Yeah.
And there's that too. There's no appreciation on the part of the intellectual elite for the pathologies of rationalism.
Right.
I mean, there's nothing stupider than a smart person who went wrong. You know, like you can tangle, and I've seen this in my clients, you know, frequently. Like, if I have a particularly smart client who's particularly disordered in their personality, that's often so difficult. It's almost unimaginable because they're so good at rationalizing, for example.
What is your approach to handling someone like that, who's like super intelligent, but yet completely their life is in disarray?
Well, you know, I usually take a very practical approach. Like, you know, we try to identify, because I start always in my therapy practice, I always start with behavioral principles. It's like, okay, well, let's see if we can identify a few areas, you know, through negotiation that are really causing you grief and misery. You know, like what's wrong with your life as far as you're concerned. And so that often takes a lot of discussion. And then we might try to figure out what's causing that. And that's often very difficult to figure out too, because it might be something physical. You know, you might be sick in some way, because lots of depression is autoimmune related, and anxiety can be a side effect of all sorts of physiological disorders, or eating improperly, or sleeping badly, or not exercising, you know, enough to kind of keep yourself regulated. So you try to figure out what's causing it, and then you try to sketch out some possible solution that we could both test. And then with the more intelligent ones, you know, often they can come up with all sorts of reasons why none of this is going to work, or 1,000 reasons why. Usually 1,000 reasons why none of this is going to work. And with people like that, sometimes it's useful to turn to their dreams if they dream, because one of the things that's cool about dreams is that even though they're hard to interpret, they never lie. And so sometimes you can take someone who's hyper rational and they'll have a dream and they'll tell you the dream, and then you can work through an interpretation, which is a tricky business. And the dream will tell them something, and there's just no denying it. It's like, well, it's a statement from nature. So what are you going to do? You're going to pretend that that's not the case? You know, so that's often extremely useful. Back to the equality issue. So here's what's happened. So psychologists have, and this is what's putting a tail, not in the tail of the Scandinavians, psychologists have come to a pretty decent agreement about standard personality models, right? So there's extroversion, neuroticism, agreeableness, openness, and conscientiousness. And they look fairly stable cross-culturally. And that was all done by asking thousands of people hundreds and hundreds of questions and then grouping them statistically. So it was atheoretical, basically. It took computational power and statistics to find out that these are how traits group. So extroverted people are sociable and happy, and neurotic people experience a fair bit of negative emotion. So that's the positive and negative emotion dimensions. Agreeable people are maternal, and disagreeable people are competitive, and there's a fair bit of male-female difference there. Conscientious people are dutiful and industrious and orderly, and the open people are creative. And so those are your basic 5 dimensions. Okay, so that's been established, and everyone more or less agrees on it. Now, maybe there's 7 dimensions, and we've got a questionnaire that breaks the 5 down into 10. That's called Understand Myself. But basically, there's good consensus on the 5. Okay, so now, as soon as you have the 5 basic traits, you can ask some questions like, well, do men and women differ? And so what you do is you just give the questionnaire. You can either fill it out yourself or have other people fill it out on your behalf. So, and it could be a teacher, it could be a parent, and that's all being done. And what you find is there are systematic differences between men and women. And the biggest differences are that women experience more negative emotion, and that they're more agreeable than men. So, and that's borne out by the psychiatric evidence, because higher levels of negative emotion are manifested in depression and anxiety, and women are diagnosed with higher levels of depression and anxiety all around the world. And with agreeableness, that's also borne out by the clinical literature in some sense, the medical literature, socio-medical literature, because disagreeable people are more likely to be incarcerated, because it's the best predictor of being incarcerated, even though it's not a very good predictor. And men are incarcerated at about a 10-to-1 rate compared to women, and are more likely to be antisocial and conduct disordered. So the personality differences are mirrored in the socio-medical literature. Okay, so there are differences, but then there's a question. Are those differences a consequence of socialization, or are they biological? And the answer to that is tricky, because how much something is social and how much it is biological actually depends on the social circumstances. So, well, here's an example. If you have a society where no one has enough to eat and people are starving, then there's a huge cultural effect on people's intelligence, let's say, that's mediated by economic factors, even though it's got a biological origin, right, the starvation. So the relationship between biology and culture is actually partly culturally dependent, so it makes it complicated. But in any case, here's how the scientists decided to address this. They thought, well, why don't we rank order countries by how egalitarian their social policies are, which you can do with a fair degree of reliability. You put the countries where women are second-class citizens at the bottom, and you'd put the Scandinavian countries at the top. You can get good reliability across raters for how you'd rate those countries. And then look at the magnitude of the differences between men and women by the egalitarian social policies. And so then you'll find out, and here's the hypothesis. If the differences between men and women are primarily social, then as cultures become more egalitarian, men and women will become more alike. That's not what happened. The opposite happened. The more egalitarian the society, and it turns out the richer the society, because that's also being discovered now, the more different men and women become. And so the differences are not huge. So with agreeableness, for example, if you took the average man, if you took a typical man and a typical woman out of the population, just randomly, and you had to bet that the woman was more aggressive than the man, you'd be wrong 60% of the time. So there's quite a bit of overlap, right? Because you'd be right 40% of the time. But the problem is that a lot of selection takes place at the extremes. Maybe you're only concerned about disagreeable people when they become violent. And maybe it's only the 1 in 50 most disagreeable person who's violent. And they're all men. So you can have quite a bit of similarity at the average level and big differences at the extremes. And the extremes is where people do things like employment selection. So the biggest difference that's been discovered between men and women, and this is the one that gets biggest in the Scandinavian countries, is interest. Men are more interested in things, and women are more interested in people. And it's a big difference. It's 1 full standard deviation. So what that means is that if you were a man, you would have to be more interested in people than 85% of men to be as interested in people as the 50th percentile woman. And you'd have to be more interested in things than 85% of women to be as interested in things as the typical man.
And how do you define things? Objects?
Gadgets.
Okay.
Gadgets.
Oh, okay.
Things. Non-animate things.
Cars.
Tools.
Yeah.
Technology.
Right.
STEM fields. Because the other thing that's happened is that the more egalitarian the society, the fewer women go into the STEM fields. The fewer.
That's interesting.
Okay. So now this unravels in a big way. It's like this is a hugely relevant issue politically, because it means that you cannot have equality of opportunity and equality of outcome at the same time. It's not possible, because as you make your society more egalitarian and you open up the opportunity for equality of outcome, you increase how different men and women are, and that changes their occupational choice. So if men are more interested in things, which they are by a substantial margin, then way more of them are going to be engineers.
Wouldn't that possibly support this idea that an enforced model of equality would allow people to be themselves more? I mean, this is almost what you're saying. Well,
that is the optimistic viewpoint. Like,
look,
it's so funny because the Swedish foreign minister told me to go climb back under the rock that I came out from under when I was in Scandinavia, because I was describing this science.
I read that, but I'm not exactly sure why.
Well, she regards me as misogynist because I think that because I've been putting forward the evidence that there are genuine differences between men and women.
But she should be held accountable for that, because that's just a flippant thing to say. Like, you should have, especially in a position of power like she's in, you should have a very specific argument. Saying, like, for a leader to have such a base thing to say, such a crude, dumb thing to say, crawl back under the rock that you came from.
Yeah, well, I thought she was making a joke about lobsters, but I don't think she was.
The lobsters go into rocks? I guess they do. They grow in cracks.
Yeah, and the bigger lobsters have better rocks.
That was another very interesting thing in the GQ thing, where the woman was challenging you on your neurobiology, your neurochemistry, your understanding.
Yes. Well, hardly any psychologists understand that serotonin is associated with hierarchies. It's like a truism. It's been known for 30 years. So
we can definitely get back to that. But I'm very curious about this, because this idea of enforced equality, right? Ensuring that there is such a high emphasis placed on equality, that you have the equal amount of men and the equal amount of women, and the opportunities are absolutely available as much to women as they are to men. This is enforced. That this creates an environment where there's less resistance. Perhaps women don't feel, I'll show you.
Yeah, that is what seems to happen.
This is
here's an example. So there are fewer women mathematicians in the higher echelons. Okay, but here's something interesting about mathematical ability. First of all, it's very rare, so that's the first thing to keep in mind. Now, it looks like, if you look in junior high, that mathematically gifted men and males and females are approximately as common. Now, there's a little bit of debate about that, because there is some evidence that maybe at the very upper extremes there's a male advantage, just like there's a male disadvantage at the low end, because the male distribution for intelligence might be flatter. And so that's the greater male variability hypothesis. There's been papers putting that forward that have been retracted as a consequence of pressure from politically correct people, even though greater male variability is actually quite common in the animal kingdom for a variety of reasons. Men are more expendable, that males are more expendable in some ways, or you could say that males are more likely to pursue high-risk, high-return strategies. You can look at it either way, and it's certainly possible. In any case, the males in junior high who happen to be mathematically gifted are less likely to also be verbally gifted, whereas that doesn't seem to be the case for the females. And so if you're a male math nerd, then math is a pretty logical pathway for you, because you don't have as many other options. Whereas if you're a female math nerd, you have other options, because you're more likely to also be verbally gifted. And so that's enough to, at least in principle, account for some of the reason why there are fewer women mathematicians than men mathematicians.
They have other options.
They have other options. And there's lots of complex reasons like this. And so we have this reflexive idea, and this is very much the case, because this is like the core idea among the feminist neo-Marxist types, is that if there's differences in outcome, that's proof of prejudice. And that's support for the idea of the patriarchal tyranny. And that's like the core axiom of the radical left, is the patriarchal tyranny, as far as I'm concerned. That's God for them, the patriarchal tyranny. It's like, well, if it turns out that many of these differences in outcome between men and women aren't a consequence of the patriarchal tyranny, in fact, even get bigger when you reduce the tyrannical aspect of the patriarch and even the patriarchal aspect to it, then it makes that theory not only wrong, but opposite of the truth, which is the worst kind of wrong. And so, if men are more likely to pursue careers in the STEM fields, which seems to be the case, under conditions of optimal freedom for men and women, then that's going to drive income disparities because the STEM fields pay more. And they pay more partly because they're scalable. Like, it's really hard to scale care for people. Like if you work in a daycare, you're going to care for 3 infants. You're not going to care for 50 because you can't. It's not scalable. But if you're like a software designer, it's infinitely scalable. And so there's a much wider range of possibility for generating much larger income pools and much larger pools of wealth. And men are also more likely to work longer hours. If you work 10% longer hours, you make 40% more money. There's a nonlinear return on. That's a good thing for everybody who's listening to know. If you have a job, you want to be the guy or the woman who's working that extra 10% because the return on that is nonlinear. So that's a really useful thing to know. Men are more likely to work outside. They're more likely to work in dangerous businesses. They're more likely to run full-time businesses rather than part-time businesses. And they're more likely to move in pursuit of their career goals. And that all contributes to differences in among Uber drivers, they make 7% more money because they drive faster. So anyways,
that's not good though.
Well, no, but it's a high risk. It's a high risk, high return issue, right?
It's a pattern male. It's
more risk.
Pattern.
There's more risk in it, so there's more return as long as you don't get hurt.
Right.
And I think that's a pretty common male pattern. Is there's more risk, there's more return as long as you don't get hurt.
The problem seems to be when discussing these things in any way romanticizing or glorifying male behavior, or putting any emphasis whatsoever on there being a positive aspect to a lot of the things that we think of as being negative, like aggression or ambition or competition. And
well,
competition amongst men is fine. Yeah. Competition with men against women is often thought of as cruel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, yes, well, and there's a certain amount of reason for that as well, because obviously physical competition it's easy for that to border on cruel.
This is why we were talking before the show that instead of calling people men and women when referring to because there's this very disturbing, in my opinion, trend of transgender women entering into these competitions now with women who are biologically female and dominating them. Yeah. And that instead of calling people men and women, let's dispense with that.
Yeah, you can be a man or a woman.
Just say
you can be a man or a woman. That's your choice, and you can change it whenever you want. So you're a man or a woman, and that's your choice. But we're going to have a new rule, which is that if you have an XY chromosome, so you're an XY person or an XX person, then if you're an XY person, you don't get to engage in physical combat with an XY person.
Yes.
Men or women.
An XX person.
Doesn't matter.
Yes.
Yeah. How would that be?
If you're XY, you can't engage in physical combat with XX.
That's right. XYs cannot hit XXs. How's that? And maybe they can't run in running contests against them, and maybe they can't play tennis against them. Not within... And maybe that's just reasonable. Right?
It is reasonable.
Yes, it is certainly reasonable.
It is reasonable, but if you talk about that, especially someone like you, who you were against this bill that was going to enforce these pronouns and the compelling the use of these pronouns, that you're thought to be a transphobic person because you feel like there maybe should be some rational discussion about the physical limitations of certain body structures, because that's what it is. If you're talking about my field of business, you're talking about combat sports.
Right.
I've been involved in combat sports my whole life, and there is a difference. And it's not to say that females aren't competent. And I mean, I had Miriam Nakamoto on yesterday. She's a good friend of mine. She's an 8-time world Muay Thai champion. I mean, she's a monster. But she doesn't fight against men, and she shouldn't fight against men, although she probably could beat a bunch of them.
Right.
It's not. She shouldn't have to. And she's
a tough woman can beat a variety of men.
Oh, yes.
But a really tough man can beat all women.
Yes.
Right, so that's the problem.
That's the reality.
Yes,
And
that is definitely
there's
the
just-
reality.
And people don't like to hear these things, and they want to pretend that you can even out the playing field with hormones. No, you can even it a little. There's certain things, like I've always said, if you gave Brock Lesnar a sex change and put him in a dress, he's going to run through every woman that's ever lived in the history of women. There's not a single woman that's going to be able to deal with that bone structure and that mind that guy has had with testosterone pumping through it for 39 years. It's just
preposterous that
It
we
is
even have to
preposterous.
have the discussion. It's so absolutely ridiculous.
It's the one thing that I was attacked on more than anything in my entire life, is saying that I think it's ridiculous to have a trans woman compete against women in mixed martial arts. I was like, you want to have them do it in chess? You want to have them do it in something that's non-physical? Sure. You want them to be a woman? Yes, okay. You want them to be recognized as a woman? You sure. But as soon as you're compelling people, like here's one that's going up lately. If you don't want to date a trans woman, then you are some sort of a bigot. Mm-hmm. That if you're a man, even if you want a family.
You remember in Brave New World, in Huxley's book, it was considered immoral to reject anyone's sexual advances because it was prejudicial.
Oh, yes.
And the thing is, it is prejudicial. That's the thing. Now, so that makes the question even more interesting, because the question is, at what point do you have the right to your prejudices?
Right.
And one of the things that we seem to cling to, and I would say rightly, is that we're allowed to be prejudiced when it comes to who we interact with sexually, and who we choose as friends, and that's right. That's the right to association. And you say,
but
well,
only up to a certain point.
Well,
this is because this new logic is kind of leaking into even sexual preference now. Like if you have a problem with someone being overweight, then you're a sizeist or something like that. Like, what is that?
Well, the thing is that you can't have preferences without having prejudices.
Of course, yeah.
Right, and so that's a big issue. So what does that mean? You don't get to have any preferences? How's that going to work out?
In terms of like what you like to eat, or what kind of films you enjoy, or what kind of books you read, you're allowed to have these preferences. But when it comes to what you're sexually attracted